What if you woke up tomorrow, in a medieval cottage in the year 1400? No epidural, no anesthesia, no sterilized tools. The only doctor is a midwife with blood-stained hands and prayers on her lips. And if you scream, the devil might hear you. Tonight, we're stepping into the most vulnerable moment in a woman's life. In an era where pain was expected and silence was survival. Forget what modern movies show you. Birth in the 15th century wasn't about warm water and support pillows. It was about grit, God, and gut-wrenching pain. In a time when childbirth could end your life, silence wasn't strength. It was a necessity. So before we open the wooden door to that candlelit chamber, like the video and subscribe if you're ready to witness history without comfort or filter. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is right now. It's always powerful to see where our modern world meets the past. Now, dim the lights, take a steady breath, and close your eyes, because you're about to witness childbirth. In the age before mercy, and in the 1400s, women didn't scream, not because it didn't hurt, but because they were taught that pain was holy, and silence could save your soul. You are not in a rush here. You are not expected to understand everything. You are not asked to stay awake. This is a space where time stretches like warm wax under candlelight, where stories fold into silence, and where the past drifts gently forward like a boat on still water. This is not a documentary. This is not a lesson. This is a whispered hourglass of dreams. A soft, velvet curtain drawn back to reveal the shadowed outlines of a forgotten world. It is a world of quiet gestures and cold stone floors, of herbal smoke rising from clay hearths, of whispered prayers that vanish like mist. A world where time does not blink or buzz or flash in pixelated urgency. Time here unfolds, slowly, gently, like a sigh before sleep. Tonight, we will step into the year 1400 and something. The exact year does not matter. Precision belongs to clocks, and clocks do not belong to this age. What matters is that you are now in a time where women gave birth without hospitals, without anesthesia, without privacy, without much ceremony, and often without screaming. This is not because it did not hurt. It hurt in ways most of us today will never have to fathom. But the pain was shaped by belief, by ritual, by silence, and by the body's quiet understanding of its own ancient rhythms. In this world, pain was not an emergency. It was not something to be erased or rushed through. Pain was expected. Pain was holy. Pain was a pathway. It was guided not by sterile metal tools, but by the weathered hands of other women. Women who had given birth and survived. Women who had not, but knew what to say when the breathing got thin and fast. Women who carried bundles of herbs in their aprons and the smell of warm bread in their sleeves. There were midwives. There were saints whispered to in the night. There were boiled linens and bone charms and chants that made the air shimmer in the candlelight. And there were women, always women, pushing quietly through their own storm, eyes wide open, mouths pressed shut. So, if you stay with me, if you choose to listen and drift and wander, you will find yourself not simply learning, but living through a day that was not yours, a day you were never meant for, but a day you may now visit as a shadow, as a ghost in a woolen cloak. You will wake in a wooden bed. You will feel cold through the floorboards. You will walk through frost that clings to your hem. You will smell tallow candles and smoke and herbs hung from rafters like soft, sagging wings. You will not be asked to take notes. You will not be asked to keep up. This story will not leave you behind. It will move with the softness of a feather caught in slow wind. You may close your eyes. You may forget the names. You may drift in and out like breath. That is perfectly fine. That is the point. If you fall asleep, that is a kind of remembering too, a kind of dreaming. Sleep is not the end of listening. It is a deeper kind of hearing. You are welcome to fade. You are welcome to rest. You may find it hard to imagine a time when pain was accepted with such quiet grace. You may feel a strange ache in your chest for women you will never know, who breathed through fire without crying out. But their strength is not meant to be admired like a relic. It is meant to be heard in the stillness between your own breaths, felt in the weight of silence, the kind of silence that holds you, not the kind that abandons you. So now, take a long breath. Let your jaw soften. Let the tension fall from your shoulders like an old shawl slipping down. Close your eyes, if you wish, or leave them half open, watching the candlelight flicker behind your mind's eye. You are about to travel, not through space, but through softness, through memory, through the mist of time, and if at any moment you drift away, if the warmth of your bed pulls you under, if your dreams begin to overlap with the sound of this voice, that is perfectly fine. You are not meant to finish this. You are meant to feel it. You are meant to rest. You are meant to sleep. You do not wake with a start. There is no alarm, no vibration, no blinding light from a screen that demands your name. Instead, your eyes open slowly, as if they are blooming. The darkness around you is thick and still. It holds you like a swaddled child, not rushing you, not even noticing your movement. You are not yet entirely sure where you are, but there is something different in the air, something old, something cold. You lie on your side, and the first thing you notice is the smell. It is not unpleasant, just unfamiliar. A mingling of damp wood, dried lavender, straw, and the faintest trace of smoke. The scent curls around your senses like steam rising from a heavy cup. The straw mattress beneath you is uneven. It creaks softly when you move. There is no pillow, only a rolled bit of wool that smells like animal skin and salt. Your blanket is rough, made from wool that has never known bleach or factory precision. It clings to your shoulders with a damp kind of weight, like the fog that coats the moors just before sunrise. The room is not entirely dark. A narrow slit in the wooden wall, no glass, just a shutter slightly ajar, allows the faintest thread of gray morning light to slip through. The light is not strong enough to define anything. Instead, it outlines shapes like whispers pressed into fog. A stool, a chipped basin, a bundle of drying herbs tied with frayed string. The corners of the room are heavy with shadow, soft and unmoving. Nothing here is in a hurry. You sit up slowly, and the blanket slips from your shoulders. The air touches your skin like cold breath. You shiver, not from fear, from the unshaped chill of the early hour. You lower your feet to the floor and find it is not floorboards as you might expect, but beaten earth, dry, cracked, and cool. It welcomes your soles with a kind of hush. Your clothes, folded neatly beside your bed, are waiting. A linen shift, coarsely woven, slightly scratchy but warm. It smells faintly of smoke and crushed thyme. You pull it over your head and it falls heavily around your knees. Next is a woolen kirtle dyed in deep, muted colors, perhaps once green, now faded into the soft hue of dried moss. There are no zippers, no buttons, no elastic. You tie a thin cord around your waist, feeling your body return to its shape beneath. The layers. Everything you wear feels like it belongs to the earth. Textiles pulled from soil and sheep and wind, not machines. As you stand, the ceiling seems lower than what you remember in the modern world. The beams above you are thick with age and smoke stains. A spider has made its quiet kingdom in the corner nearest the door, its web catching the dim morning in silver threads. You do not mind. Here, everything is alive, even the quiet. You step outside. The door groans softly, as if surprised to be opened. It does not shut with a click, but with a heavy, wooden thud. The outside greets you not with sound, but with stillness. You are in a village, somewhere in the English countryside. There is no signage, no humming wires above your head, just sky, gray, heavy, beautiful, the kind of sky that seems full of thought. Your breath is visible in the morning air. It curls out of you like mist from a kettle. The ground is wet with dew, and mud clings to your boots, thick and reluctant to let go. Your boots, leather, cracked, softened by years of wear, feel snug and certain around your feet. To your left, smoke rises from a chimney made of stacked stone. It smells of damp wood and old ash. Somewhere nearby, a rooster gives a slow, hoarse cry. It sounds tired, as if even it knows the day will be long. A dog barks, not in alarm, but in recognition. And then silence again, the silence of a world without engines. You walk slowly, past thatched roofs and timbered walls, past doors made not to lock but to lean, past a cart left half-loaded with firewood, and a woman gathering rushes into a fraying basket. Her back is bent, and her eyes are not surprised to see you. In this world, no one is quite new, no one is quite unfamiliar. Faces carry the weight of the familiar. You hear the dull clatter of a pot being stirred. You catch the scent of boiled oats and wet wool. In the distance, a church bell tolls, not sharp, not mechanical, but round and heavy, as though time itself must be lifted with effort. The village does not rush. It breathes, and you walk through it, unseen. Or perhaps not unseen, but understood as something that does not require explanation. You pass a child gathering stones. He does not look up. A woman turns a spindle, spinning wool into thread with fingers that have done this 1,000 times and will do it 1,000 more. Her rhythm is the rhythm of this place. You come to a stream. The water is dark with peat and thick with the cold of early spring. You crouch and touch it. It bites your fingers with a chill that is almost sacred. Above you, the wind rustles the bare branches of trees that will bloom soon, but have not yet been told it is time. You are fully here now. Your body is beginning to forget what warm tiles feel like beneath your feet. Your hands no longer search for your phone. You have no name here, no tasks, no schedule. Only breath and sky and the slow, deep song of a world without interruption. And just beyond this moment, if you continue down this road, you will begin to understand the rules of this land, the threads that bind its people, its customs, its quiet urgencies. You will learn how to move without drawing attention, how to nod without offense, how to fold yourself into the rhythm of a place where silence is not emptiness, but the truest language of all. But for now, just walk. Slowly. Let the mud claim your footprints. Let the wind carry your thoughts. Let the day begin without you needing to command it. You are here. Your woolen cloak brushes softly against your skin as you move forward. The fabric is heavy, and it holds the scent of the outside, smoke from the morning fire, the must of damp earth, the faint sweetness of hay. In this world, clothing is not a statement. It is not fashion. It is not curated or color-matched or guided by trend. It is protection. It is warmth. It is inheritance, sewn and resewn, until the seams are more memory than thread. You are wrapped in layers. First, the shift, made of undyed linen, woven unevenly on a wooden loom. It rubs gently against your skin, never soft, but never harsh. Then comes your kirtle, dyed in plant-based color that has softened over years of washing in cold water. A muted russet, perhaps, or faded green. Colors here are subdued, born from roots and berries and leaves, not chemicals. They are gentle. Colors, the kinds that do not shout. Your sleeves are fitted tightly at the wrist, laced with a simple length of twine. Your fingers are cold, but not uncomfortably so. You flex them and notice the roughness of your palms, the way your skin remembers. Labor. Your apron ties at the waist and falls heavy over your thighs. It bears stains of meals long past, and the scent of rosemary clings faintly to the cloth. Your shoes are made of leather, worn soft over years, stitched by hand, and mended many times. They do not match, not exactly, but they fit you. The left squeaks slightly as you walk, the sound muffled by the soft mud beneath you. They are shaped by your feet and no one else's. They know you. On your head, a wimple or a linen veil covers your hair, depending on your status. Your hair is bound. Underneath, not styled, not curled, not free. Loose hair is reserved for girls and brides, not for daily life. There is warmth in the cloth, and a comfort in the way it quiets the world around your ears. Hair is not displayed here, it is managed, bound, made clean. Beauty is not the goal. Modesty is the expectation. Simplicity, the virtue. Men around. You wear hose and tunics, often patched, belted with cord or narrow leather. Their garments are tighter at the calves, looser at the chest, practical and coarse. They wear hats to keep the weather off their brows, and their boots are hardened by frost and time. There are no mirrors in this world, not for ordinary people. You come to know your face only through reflection in water, through the words of others, or the way your child touches your cheek as though it is familiar. You do not dress to be seen. You dress to endure. Clothing here does not just cover. It remembers. There is a rhythm to behavior in this world, a quiet choreography that everyone follows, even if no one speaks of it. Here, manners are not elaborate or decorative. They are survival. They are order. They are respect wrapped in stillness. You do not wave. You do not rush up in greeting. Instead, you incline your head slightly as you pass. You lower your eyes when speaking to someone above your station. You speak slowly, softly. You do not interrupt. You do not laugh loudly in public. Your voice does not lead the room. It enters like a thread through fabric, gentle and necessary. When, approaching a doorway, you knock or call softly before entering, even if the door hangs open. Privacy is rare and precious. To barge in is to offend deeply. You do not sit unless invited. You do not speak to the Lord unless spoken to. You do not walk in front of the priest or cross your arms in church. These are not rules you read. They are rules you feel, pressed into you by the still glances of those who came before. If someone hands you something, bread, wool, a bowl of broth, you receive it with both hands. To use only one is to appear careless, or worse, disrespectful. When you meet someone, you do not shake hands as one might today. That gesture is not yet born. Instead, you nod. A man may bow, low and steady. A woman may curtsy slightly, though the gesture is subtle and often just a dip of the knees and a folding of the hands. To show too many teeth when you smile is unseemly. A small smile, closed-lipped, is enough. Excess is never admired here. Restraint is the finest form of dignity. Eyes are lowered not from shame, but from respect. Loudness is not strength. It is strangeness. The loud are watched carefully and never trusted entirely. At meals, you do not speak with your mouth full. You do not eat before the head of the table does. You use your fingers carefully, always with the cloth nearby to wipe them. Napkins are not commonplace, but sleeves, aprons, and manners are. If you must spit, you turn your head away from others and aim toward the fire or the dirt, never toward stone floors and never near food. When you pass someone on a narrow path, you nod. You might offer a simple phrase, "God keep you," or "Good morrow," spoken with humility. Always with humility. And when you leave, you do not turn your back quickly. You step away slowly, eyes soft, posture straight, as though your presence itself is a kind of smoke that must dissolve gently into the air. In this world, your days are shaped not only by the rising sun or the toll of the village bell, but by your place in the order of things. And that place is first and most deeply defined by your gender. It is not questioned. It is not debated. It is simply known, like the way water flows downhill or the way fire eats wood. Here, being a woman means one life, being a man, another entirely. Women are the hearth. They are warmth and bread and the slow, eternal rhythm of the home. From the moment they rise, their tasks begin, and they do not end until darkness has wrapped the village in silence. They draw water from the well, lifting it with aching arms and cold fingers. They grind grain, knead dough, tend goats, mend clothes, sweep ash, soothe infants, gather herbs, boil linen, scrape lard from bowls, and tuck children into beds where lice and love live side by side. A woman's body is not her own. It is lent. To the family, to the children it bears, to the man it obeys. And yet it is also powerful. It bleeds and births and bends without breaking. It knows pain without panic. It suffers without noise. A woman is expected to endure, to serve, to remain. Men are the field. They walk long distances, their backs bowed under the weight of wood or hay. They plow, sow, harvest, and tend to animals. They build fences, repair carts, chop wood, and attend the Lord's summons when called. They may speak more freely in public, though they too bow their heads to those above them. They do not cry where others can see. They do not speak of softness. Marriage is a duty, not a choice. Love is a luxury, a kindness that may grow in time, but is never required. A girl may be married by 12. A boy may become a father before he has ever held coin in his palm. The roles are inherited like land, passed down, not questioned. You are what you must be. But within these walls, within this system, there is strength that does not shout. A woman may run her household like a kingdom. A man may weep into the earth when no one watches. Each bears the burden of expectation, not because it is fair, but because it is theirs. Here, your gender is not a matter of identity. It is a matter of responsibility. You must understand something now. As the mist still clings to the morning and your breath curls in the cold like threads of silk, this is not a world of equals. The land is layered, stacked like stone upon stone, and every person, every family, every breath you take rests within its place. It is not questioned, it is not debated, it is simply lived. At the very top is the monarch, a figure distant and divine, whose name is spoken with reverence but whose face you may never see. Beneath the monarch are nobles, barons, lords and ladies, those whose blood is considered richer than your own, whose lands stretch beyond your horizon, whose children are clothed in wool without patches. Their words weigh more than yours, their silence louder. If you cross them, even in error, the cost is dear. Below them are knights and clergy. The knight's role is to fight and protect, but also to enforce the Lord's justice. Their armor gleams with status, not merely function. The clergy, too, are powerful. Though they own no land in the same way as a noble, they command the soul. And the soul, in this time, is everything. A priest may forgive or condemn. His words are law for those who believe, and nearly all believe. Next come freemen, skilled. In trade, smiths, carpenters, weavers. They own their tools and sometimes their homes. They may earn coin, though not much. They may read, though rarely. Still, their hands are respected, for they build and mend what others cannot. Beneath them, the largest layer of all, peasants, serfs, laborers. They do not own the land they till. They do not keep all they grow. They pay taxes in wheat and work and obedience. Their names are rarely written, their voices rarely heard, but they feed the world, quietly, constantly, and then, lower still, those without land, without work, beggars, vagabonds, women alone without protection of husband or brother, those accused of sorcery or sin. They exist in the margins, where the cold is sharper and mercy thinner. Punishment is swift, often cruel. The stocks in the village square are not ornamental. Thieves may lose fingers, liars may lose tongues. Those who challenge the order may vanish into stone cells, and no one will speak their name again. There is no trial as you understand it. Justice is not blind here. It sees your station clearly, so step carefully. Nod when spoken to. Keep your voice low and your eyes lower. If the reeve asks your name, speak it clearly. If the Lord's steward walks by, step aside and bow your head. If you are accused, pray the priest favors your soul. And if you must break a rule, break it in silence. For in this world, silence is the softest armor. You wake slowly. You do not rise with purpose, but with the rhythm of breath. One breath, then another. The light has not yet fully entered the room. What light there is comes pale and reluctant through the slats in the shuttered window. It spreads across the packed earth floor in thin, chalky ribbons. There is no clock to command you, no alarm to tear you from sleep, only the steady, almost inaudible stirrings of life outside, the soft cluck of hens, the low murmur of voices. From a nearby hearth, the first movement of feet on straw-strewn ground. The air is cold, not sharp or cruel, but honest. It reminds you that the fire burned out in the night, and that warmth now lives only within your layered garments and your limbs still curled beneath the coarse wool blanket. You draw it tighter for just a moment, savoring the last hush of rest before the day begins its slow and steady unfolding. You are not alone in this room. Others stir quietly. Siblings, children, perhaps a cousin or a laborer taken in for the season. Privacy is a luxury unheard of for your station. You sleep shoulder to shoulder, dreams tangled together like threads in a loom. You do not speak upon waking. Words are saved for later, when the voice is warmed by broth and work. The silence of morning is respected. It is not an emptiness, but a kind of sacred beginning, soft as a prayer. You rise. The blanket slips from your shoulders. Cold rushes to greet your skin. You move toward the water basin, your toes registering the chill of the earth floor beneath them. The water in the bowl is cold from the night, still as stone. You dip your hands and bring the icy liquid to your face. It stings at first, then refreshes. There is no soap, not in the way you know it. Perhaps a sliver of lye-based soap remains, scraped to its end, or a cloth steeped in rosemary water the evening before. Cleanliness is not sterility. It is ritual. It is respect for the day to come. You dress quickly. Your underlayer first, a linen shift, the fabric coarse but familiar. It clings where it is damp and folds where it has worn thin. Then your kirtle, laced at the sides or front depending on its make, dyed with plant colors that once bloomed in, gardens or hedgerows. You fasten your belt. You wrap your apron. These motions are practiced, almost unconscious, guided by habit more than thought. You glance around the room, a hearth cold and gray, marked with the ghost of last night's fire. A shelf with bowls made from clay, each one imperfect and loved. A small wooden chest with iron hinges containing what little you own. A shawl for colder days, a rosary of carved bone, a ribbon saved from your mother. Everything here has been touched 1,000 times. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is new. A child stirs beside the fire pit, rubbing eyes with small fists. You gesture softly, helping them sit, wrapping them in an old shawl before they feel the full sting of morning. You move to the fire and begin the process of bringing it back to life. You rake through ash to find embers that still glow, hiding beneath the pale dust. You cradle them in dry moss and kindling. You blow, gently, steadily. A breath like lullaby. The ember awakens, becomes flame. It crackles and spits in greeting. You feed it twigs, then sticks, then logs. The hearth begins to hum again, and with it, the room begins to breathe. You prepare a simple breakfast. Oats soaked overnight now warmed in the pot. A few stale crusts softened in broth. A wedge of cheese, perhaps, if it has not molded too far. Food is not measured here in portions or calories. It is measured in availability, in need, in gratitude. You ladle the warm porridge into bowls, hand-carved and worn smooth by generations of use. A child chews slowly, rhythmically, as though each bite holds a story from the fields. No one rushes. No one speaks over one another. The day is too long to begin with noise. You step outside for a moment, letting the air touch your face again. Morning mist clings low to the grass, and the sun is trying to rise, its light filtered through a pale veil of cloud. The village around you is beginning to wake. A rooster crows again. A door opens. Wood creaks. Voices call across the yards. In short, clipped greetings. A woman begins to churn butter, her hands working in time with the dull thud of the churn stick. A man leads a mule from a lean-to, the animal stubborn and sleepy, its breath visible in the cold. Back inside, you wrap, your head in a linen veil. You check your hands for any cuts or bruises from yesterday's work. You run your fingers over the wooden spoon you'll carry through the day, checking for splinters. You fold cloths, tuck herbs into your pouch, feed the fire one last stick. You nod to the others. They nod back. There is no ceremony to the beginning of the day. And yet it is sacred. It is woven from the same cloth each morning, yet never quite the same. It is the way you prepare yourself not just for tasks, but for being seen, for enduring, for walking into the expectations of your world. And as you step over the threshold into the breath of morning, you carry it all with you, the warmth of the fire, the stillness of the waking room, the hush of habit. The day has begun. Quietly, steadily, as it always does. You stand before the hearth once more, the memory of this ritual folded into your bones as surely as the warmth of the fire is folded into the earth beneath your feet. You set down your apron, feeling its weight around your waist, and gather your tools. A wooden spoon darkened by years of stirring, a shallow clay bowl chipped at the rim, and a rough linen cloth dampened in cool water to wipe your hands as you work. The hearth is alive beneath your palms. Embers glow faintly beneath charred logs, and you kneel to tend them, raking away the pale ash to reveal the smoldering heart of the last night's flame. Your breath fans the glowing coals, coaxing tongues of orange and yellow to dance once more, and you place fresh wood upon them, listening to the crackle and hiss as the fire catches hold and warms the damp stones of the hearth. The air is thick with smoke and the promise of nourishment, a promise you honor every morning by coaxing sustenance from simple things. Beside the fire, a cauldron hangs from a rusted iron hook. You lift its heavy lid and peer inside at the remnants of yesterday's broth, a thin, cloudy liquid studded with flecks of herbs and the last bits of bone. You transfer it gently to a smaller pot, careful not to disturb the settled sediment, and carry the cauldron away to cool. In its place you hang a new pot, poured with fresh well water that trembles in the early heat. You add oats, their edges milled unevenly by the stone grinder, and a handful of dried herbs, thyme or rosemary, depending on what remains in your pouch. You stir the mixture with slow, deliberate circles, feeling the grains yield beneath your spoon, softening into a meal that will fill hollow bellies with warmth and energy. The sound of each stroke is muted by the hearth's roar, a private conversation between spoon and porridge. While the porridge simmers, you turn to the table made of roughly hewn boards. You lay out wedges of hard cheese, its pale interior marbled with veins of mold and salty tang, and thin slices of smoked meat, cut from cuts you cured yourself last autumn. You arrange a basket of coarse bread, still warm from the communal bake oven, its crust crackling under the weight of your palm and its crumb soft enough to yield to a gentle squeeze. The bread has been formed from barley and rye, the grains, ground to varying degrees of coarseness so that each bite offers a different texture, some bits that dissolve on the tongue, others that must be chewed with patient deliberation. Bread is the staff of life here, forged in fire and carried from hearth to hand, sustaining more than just the body but the very tradition of making food with reverence. You ladle the steaming porridge into bowls, the steam curling toward your face like a whisper of comfort. You drizzle a spoonful of honey from a small jar, thick and golden and sticky, the sweetness a gift from earlier seasons when the bees worked the hedgerows, and you watch as it dissolves in the hot oats, leaving ribbons of light in the murky gray. A handful of chopped nuts, hazelnut or walnut as the season allows, adds a brittle contrast to the soft porridge, and you sprinkle them with care before carrying the bowls to the table. The clay beneath your fingertips is cool now, but it warms quickly as the porridge seeps heat into its walls. Around the table, the others gather without haste. A child holds a bowl between small hands, lips already parted to catch a stray bead of porridge, eyes shining with anticipation. A man settles heavily on a bench, steam coiling from his breath as he leans forward to inhale the aroma. Each person brings a quiet gratitude to the meal. There are no words of blessing, for prayer was offered in the dark hours before dawn. Now there is only the communion of shared bread and porridge and the tacit understanding that this meal binds you to the land that grew the grain, to the hands that milled it, to the hearth that broke the night for you. You break a piece of bread and dip it into the remaining broth, lifting each morsel with the reverence of a sacred token. Your teeth sink through hardened crust into tender. Crumb and the flavors mingle. The sharpness of cheese, the smoke of meat, the bitter sweetness of porridge. You chew slowly, mind aware of each texture, each taste, each breath of steam that brushes against the roof of your mouth. This act of eating is not rushed, for haste would dishonor the food and the effort it took to prepare. As the meal continues, you refill bowls quietly, wiping spills with the linen cloth and listening to the subtle symphony of contented breaths and the muted scrape of spoon against bowl. There are no seconds unless all have had their fill. No clamor for more bread, only a gentle passing of dishes, an unspoken consideration that each deserves a taste before hunger returns. After the last spoonful of porridge has been eaten and the crumbs swept into the palm of your hand to be fed to a waiting child or buried near a sapling, you rise to clear the table. The process is as deliberate as its setting. Bowls rinsed and set to drain, spoons wiped and placed aside, remnants stored for midday or evening use. Finally, you return to the hearth, loosening the coals and letting them rest under a covering of ash, ready to be rekindled when night falls again. The smell of wood smoke lingers in your hair, in your clothes, in your lungs. It is the aroma of survival, of care, of the unending cycle of nourishment. You may feel its echo in the slow warmth of your belly, a reminder that each day begins with this: preparing food, sharing sustenance, offering quiet thanks in the language of labor and breath. And as you step away, you carry with you the silent promise of the next meal, the next fire, the next slow turning of the world. Food here is not mere fuel. It is story. It is ritual. It is community. It is the soft ember of connection that holds you close when the wind howls outside and the night seems endless. In these moments, you understand not only how to feed the body, but how to nourish the soul. You step from the warmth of the hearth into the pale light of mid-morning, leaving the steam of breakfast curling behind you like a half-remembered dream. Your hands still carry the scent of porridge and smoke as you cross the earthen floor to gather your tools. A short-handled hoe with a face of iron, a woven basket with a handle worn smooth by years of use, and a length of rope knotted at intervals, to mark measurements of rope or cord. Outside, the village is already alive in its quiet way. Women bending to lift water from the well, men guiding oxen along furrows in the field, children chasing one another in the dust, their laughter faint against the low drone of work. There is no sense of hurry, only a steady unfolding of necessary tasks, each one integral to the fragile balance of life here. You begin with the garden, a patch of dark soil hemmed by stones and overarched by the skeletal limbs of an old fruit tree. The earth is damp from an early shower, soft beneath your boots, and you kneel carefully, planting seeds row by row with careful precision. Each seed is a small promise, a promise of greens to be eaten, of roots to be boiled, of herbs to be steeped in healing waters come winter. Your fingers press the seeds just below the surface, cover them with soil, and pat the earth gently, feeling the cool firmness hold them in place. As you work, you brush away clods of dirt and toss them aside, watching them break apart against the wind. The smell of wet earth fills your lungs, a heady mix of moss and ancient stone, and you breathe it in as though you can carry the season in your body. Beyond the garden, the fields stretch in muted waves of green and gold, each stalk bending beneath its own weight. You join the labor of sowing or reaping depending on the season, scattering seed as though casting blessings, or cutting stalks with a sharp sickle that sings through the grain like a whispered lullaby. Your wrist moves in a practiced arc, and each cut feels like a small triumph, a measure of sustenance wrested from the land. When your basket grows heavy, you carry it back to the barn, your posture steady, your shoulders squared against the strain. You unload the grain into wooden bins, listening as the kernels clatter and settle, a melodic percussion that speaks of abundance and also of the delicate work yet to come. Milling, baking, storing. If the season demands it, you may move next, to the barn where animals await your care. Goats who bleat softly at your approach, their coats thick and matted with straw and alfalfa. You run your hands through their fur, checking for signs of illness, and then lift each one in turn to a low stool to milk, feeling the warm liquid flow into a pail as steady as rain. You think of the cheese that will form from this milk, of the butter churned by the arm that once held the wooden pestle, of the whey boiled down to feed chickens that scratch at the hay. Each creature is both companion and livelihood, bound to you by necessity and by the quiet gratitude of shared existence. Later, you return to the cottage to mend clothes and linens. You gather torn shifts, patched leggings, threadbare cloaks, and sit by the window where the light is best. You draw a length of thread through the eye of a bone needle, knot the end, and begin to stitch, your fingers moving in and out of the fabric with a gentle rhythm. Each stitch is a line of history, sometimes uneven, sometimes hidden beneath a fold, but always necessary. You work without haste, for haste invites mistakes that must be undone. You patch tears with scraps of cloth, sometimes borrowed from an old garment destined for scraps itself. You graft fabric like a surgeon, creating new life from what remains. The scent of lavender sachets tucked between linens drifts around you, a quiet comfort amid the focused work. As midday approaches, you shoulder a basket of fresh eggs gathered from the coop. The hens cluck in mild protest as you collect each egg with soft hands, setting them side by side in the basket so that none crack beneath the weight of another. You think of the omelets they will become, of the cakes that might be baked for a feast, of the broth that will thicken with their addition. You carry the basket back through the yard, tracking the path by the worn stones and the patches of clover where bees still hum. If there is wood to be chopped, you move next to the stack of logs near the yard. You lift the axe with both hands, feeling the grain of the handle familiar against your palms. You raise it above your head, the leather of your gloves creaking, and bring it down in a steady arc. The log splits with a sharp crack, and you set aside each half before deftly swinging. Again, the rhythm connects you to each strike. The distance you travel, the power you muster, the goal of warmth that will carry you through the long nights. Before the shadows grow too long, you return to the hearth to stoke the fire and lay preparations for the evening meal. You might grind grain using a hand mill, your hands pressing the upper stone in slow circles while the lower holds firm, listening to the scrape as the grain becomes flour, fine as dust. You might sort through jars of dried herbs, choosing rosemary or sage to flavor a stew, inhaling their pungent aromas as you steady them in the mortar to be crushed. You might wash the day's tools in cold water, wiping each blade clean, returning each basket to its place, hanging each tool on the peg beside the door, ready for tomorrow's labor. Throughout these chores, your mind is neither idle nor burdened. It moves in tandem with the work, an unspoken dialogue between body and purpose. Every movement is an echo of generations who shaped this routine, who found in every chore both necessity and meaning. There is no separation between labor and life here. To work is to live. To live is to work, and in that union there is a kind of grace, quiet, steady, unbreakable. As the sun begins to dip, painting the sky in muted grays and soft blues, you pause in the doorway of your cottage. You lean against the frame, your body tired but unbroken, and survey the fruits of your labor, neatly turned fields ready for the next season, a well-tended garden with sprouts promising tomorrow, a hearth primed for evening's warmth. The day has been long, but it has not been wasted. Every task you performed has woven you more deeply into the fabric of this world, stitching your existence into its evolving tapestry. And you, in turn, have carried this world within you, its soil beneath your nails, its grain in your bones, its smoke in your hair, its silent dignity in your breath. The labor of the day settles into your bones like a familiar tune, and as the sun dips lower toward the horizon, you step away from tools and hearth with a body both weary and alert. The world shifts its rhythm now, moving from the steady heartbeat of work to a softer pulse of rest and communal warmth. You leave the small yard behind, passing through gates of timber that creak on iron hinges, and find yourself walking toward the open common where the village gathers when the sun's heat has faded and the air tastes of dew and lingering warmth. A circle of people has formed, men and women, old and young, some sitting on low benches hewn from logs, others standing with arms crossed over chests. Torchlight has been kindled in iron sconces, flickering against the timber-framed houses in a glow of amber and gold. It casts long shadows that dance along the ground like silent spectators. The air carries the scent of roasting meat, perhaps mutton or pork, spiced with juniper berries and herbs. A large spit has been set up by the communal oven, and a man in a leather apron turns it slowly, so that the meat bastes itself in its own juices, each rotation a promise of flavor and warmth. Nearby, children play beneath the boughs of an old oak whose roots knotted the earth at the edge of the green. They chase one another in a game that has surely existed since before any living soul can remember. One child is it, and the rest flee in laughter, darting between legs, diving, behind tree trunks catching brief reprieves before being tagged and sending the chase anew. The laughter is soft, not piercing, like wind chimes stirred by a gentle breeze. The threat of punishment for running wild here is as unlikely as the oak losing its leaves. Tonight, the rules loosen. Tonight, the village remembers another kind of necessity. Joy. You find a spot on a wooden bench beside a woman whose hands are rough from hours of spinning wool, yet whose smile is bright in the glow of the torches. She offers you a tankard of ale, brown and murky, its froth thin but steady. You raise it to your lips, the ceramic cool against your chin, and take a cautious sip. The warmth of the drink spreads down your throat and into your chest, dispelling the chill that clung to your skin ever since dawn. It is not fine wine. It is a village ale, brewed in barrels of oak, flavored by whatever grain was plentiful, but it is enough to loosen tongues and soften the edges of the day. A musician, a fiddler, judging by the narrow bough he holds, steps into the clearing. His tunic is patched but clean, his boots worn, and around his neck hangs a small leather pouch that holds spare strings and rosin. With a nod to the gathering, he draws the bow across the first string. A single note hangs in the air, wavering for a moment before finding its voice. Then another string sings, and the melody unfolds. A simple dance tune, jaunty and bright, though played at a pace unhurried. Feet tap, shoulders sway. Couples rise and fall in gentle arcs, moving as though swaying on a slow sea, hands clasped, skirts brushing. The dance is not formal, it is communal. It is of and for the earth, a reflection of the way wind moves through grass, a reminder that bodies can speak without words. You allow yourself to be drawn into the circle, stepping lightly, matching your steps to the shifting rhythm. Your heart, accustomed to the quiet of the fields and hearth, finds a new cadence in the music, a pulse that connects you to every other person here. You catch the gleam of torches in their eyes, the way their lips curve in concentration, and delight, the soft flash of laughter when someone misses a step or stumbles. There is no shame in misstep. There is only the ongoing flow of movement, the communal telling of a story made of sound and breath. Nearby, a small fire pit has been arranged where an elder sits, carving whistles from bone. Children gather around him when they tire of running, and he presses each finished whistle into their waiting hands. They raise them to their lips and blow tentatively, producing thin, squeaking notes that make them giggle and tug at each other's sleeves. The elder watches with bright eyes, his mouth curving in a smile like the bend of a scythe, as though the act of joy is as sacred as prayer. Across the way, a group of women share fresh cheese and bread, passing platters from hand to hand in a ritual of generosity. They speak softly, voices entwined with the crackle of the fire and the murmur of the crowd. You linger to taste the cheese, creamy, tangy, still warm from the press, and the bread, its crust crackling like hidden flames, its crumb yielding. You take only what you need, then hand the platter back, and each nod of thanks is a silent bond between you and the one who offered. A storyteller, cloaked in a patchwork mantle, takes his place beneath the oak, drawing a hush from the crowd without a word. He begins with a deep breath that seems to pull the very night into his lungs, and then he speaks. His voice is calm, measured, and carries over the gathering like a gentle breeze. He weaves a tale of an ancient king who wandered the world disguised as a humble traveler, of rivers that sang at dawn, of stars that fell to earth in luminous tears. His words paint the world in soft hues, forest green, moonlit silver, ember orange, and you find yourself transported beyond the village green, riding on the currents of his voice. The minutes stretch into hours, and you do not notice the passage of time, only the unfolding of story, the rise and fall of every syllable. As the embers fade into glowing coals and the music softens into memory, the crowd begins to disperse. Couples drift home, arms linked, torches extinguished, their silhouettes merging with the night. Children, fat with laughter and berries and cheese, are led back by calloused hands. You return to your own cottage, feeling the weariness of the day settle over you again, but not as a burden. It is an ache of satisfaction. Each chore, each seed planted, each stitch mended, each bowl of porridge stirred has led you here, to this moment of shared warmth. You step inside, the door closing, with a gentle thud, and find the hearth still glowing with residual heat. You feed it one last log, listening to the fire's soft sigh as it welcomes the wood. You sit at the edge of the bench, tucking your cloak around your shoulders, and let the silence of home wrap around you. The world outside is quiet now, save for the soft whisper of wind through the thatched roof and the distant cry of an owl beginning its night watch. You place your tools, hoe, basket, rope, by the door, knowing tomorrow they will be needed again. You lay out your garments, smoothing each fold by hand before hanging them on pegs. You fold your apron and place it by the hearth, ready for the morning ritual. Then you lean back, closing your eyes, and let your mind drift on the final warmth of the day. The music, the laughter, the stories, they live on in your chest like softly beating wings. Tonight, sleep will come gently. The memory of community, of shared breath and shared work will carry you into dreams. And even there, you will find comfort in the slow unfolding of every moment, the steady pulse that binds the world together in an unspoken promise that no matter the labor, no matter the season, there is always a place for rest, for joy, for the quiet flicker of human connection beneath the vast, watchful sky. You step into the threshold of home as though crossing a sacred boundary between the world's noise and its still center. The door closes behind you with a soft, familiar thud, and the dim glow of the dying fire greets you like a quiet friend. Shadows dance along the rough-hewn walls, where wooden pegs hold the shapes of your life. Coarse woolen gowns, shapeless cloaks, a child's small shoes, each item a chapter of memory pressed into cloth and leather. This space is both shelter and sanctuary, a place where the rhythms of daily life convene with the rhythms of the heart. Family here is woven from necessity and intimacy in equal measure. There are no locked doors, no private chambers reserved for solitude. You sleep shoulder to shoulder with kin, breathing in each other's warmth as the long night deepens. You have learned every creak of the bed frame, every sigh and turn of the others until their movements are as familiar as your own. There is comfort in the shared space. A child's tiny hand brushing across your arm brings you fully awake even in the deepest darkness, a reminder that you are not alone and that sleep itself is a blessing granted by trust. By the hearth, the elder, your mother, your aunt, or perhaps your grandmother, sits on a low stool, weaving yarn into blankets or tending to a pot of evening broth. Her hands move with the confidence of decades, eyes softened by both fatigue and pride. You draw close to her side, inhaling the mingled scents of wool, herbs, and the faint sourness of fermented milk. She does not look up, and you do not speak. Words in this space are measured. A gentle touch to her shoulder is enough to convey both greeting and gratitude. She places a skein of freshly spun wool into your lap. You cradle it as though it were the most precious thing in the world, because in a sense it is, the product of her skill, the warmth it will provide when winter's breath is sharpest, the quiet testament to survival that she spins every day. Your children, if you have them, cluster at your feet. Their faces are streaked with the residue of clay and dust and play. They lean against you for a moment before scampering off to chase imagined foes among the shadows. Their laughter is hushed, but it ripples through the space like the promise of spring. You lift one tiny life into your arms, feeling the soft curve of cheek against your shoulder, the faint pulse of small heartbeat under your palm. You kiss the crown of a child's head and press a gentle blessing against its hair, knowing that each whispered word, God keep you, sleep softly, grow strong, carries more power here than any grand pronouncement. Brother and sister, uncle and cousin, servants and apprentices, they all gather in this shared hearthlight. Conversation is sparse but rich. A few words on the day's tasks, an observation of the sky beyond the shutter, a question about tomorrow's market, a comment on the new calf born in the barn. Each exchange is a thread weaving the tapestry of connection, binding you to others by the simplest acts of attention. You learn more about each person by what they do not say as much as what they do. The silence between words is a space that holds trust, a place where nothing needs to be explained. If a stranger arrives, perhaps a traveling peddler with a battered wooden cart, or a wayfarer too weary to continue, you offer them the courtesy of your home. You set an extra bowl by the hearth, fill it with warmed broth, and slide it toward them with a nod. They lift it with trembling hands, their gratitude silent but palpable. In this exchange, you glimpse how fragile and precious hospitality is in a world where each morsel is earned, each drop of water is carried by arm and muscle. You understand that by sharing what little you have, you safeguard not only another's life, but the memory of your own humanity. In moments of quiet reflection, you find yourself tracing the patterns in the smoke that rises from the hearth, watching it curl toward the ceiling beams as though it were a living creature. You think of the relationships that shape you, each one a knot in the rope of your existence. The steadfast loyalty of a sibling who shared your childhood, the steady counsel of an elder who guided your steps, the soft devotion of a partner, whose hand in yours speaks of both partnership and perseverance, the gentle adoration of a child who sees in you the center of the world. These bonds are forged in routine as much as in celebration, in the daily passing of spoons at meals, in the shared lifting of water buckets, in the communal turning of wool into thread, in the valiant rebuilding of fences under summer sun. Each act of cooperation is a reaffirmation that you belong, that you matter, that you are not alone in the vast expanse of existence. As the fire dies down, embers glow like sleepy eyes that refuse to close. You rise and walk as though through slow motion to the corner where a chest holds the tokens of your life. You lift a painted box and open it, revealing a small wooden carving, perhaps a locket gifted by a lover long gone, perhaps a talisman, blessed by a traveling monk, perhaps a token made by your own hand for a child who bears your name. You run your finger over its surface, feeling the indents and grooves, the smooth places where time has worn away the details. You do not speak to it, but you remember the moment it was made, the warmth of hands that shaped the wood, the silent prayer that accompanied each delicate cut. Then you step back to the hearth and kneel before it, pressing your hands to your knees in a posture of gratitude. You close your eyes and breathe in the smoke-scented air, imagining it as a link between past and present, between your ancestors and the generations to follow. You whisper a soft benediction. God, watch over us, keep our hearth warm, let our bonds remain unbroken, and let the words settle in the silence that follows. The silence is not empty. It is full of presence, of shared breath, of unspoken understanding that life is woven from countless small acts of care. You allow the quiet to envelop you as you rise and gather the last treasures of the day. You fold your cloak, smoothing its wrinkles with tender fingers. You lay out your night shift on the rough board beside the bed, tucking it neatly so that it will be ready when the cold touches your skin again. You place your child's small shoes beside your own, a silent promise that tomorrow you will rise again to guide them through the same woven world of warmth and challenge. And finally, you slip beneath the shared blanket, curling against the slow rise and fall of the person next to you. You feel the weight of the day give way to the hush of night. Home is not just a place. It is the delicate network of relationships that cradle you, that shape you, that carry you from one dawn to the next. Here, within these walls of wood and straw, you find not isolation but communion, not solitude but belonging. And as sleep drifts over you like a gentle tide, you hold close the knowledge that in this world of woven lives, you are never truly alone. In this world, belief is woven into each breath and each heartbeat until the boundary between the sacred and the mundane dissolves like mist at dawn. You rise before the sun and step into the pre-dawn chill, carrying a small bowl of water scented with crushed rosemary and rue. Each morning, you walk to the edge of the village, pausing where the tether of earth and sky feels most palpable. There you kneel on damp grass, pressing your palms into the cool soil. You sprinkle the herb water in a slow arc, offering thanks to the spirit of the land that yields its bounty so cautiously. You whisper a prayer without words, your lips barely parting, as though sound might wake the world too abruptly. The earth drinks the water, the herbs glow with morning dew, and you rise, feeling the land's quiet approval wrapped around your ankles. Inside the chapel, if you are lucky enough to live near its stone walls and stained glass windows, you join others in a ritual older than any living memory. There are no pews here, only simple benches hewn from oak and rough wooden flooring worn smooth by generations. The air is cool and musty, redolent of incense and damp stone. A single taper flickers on the altar, its flame steady against the hush. As you enter, you bow deeply, hands clasped at your waist, head bowed so that your veil brushes your chest. You do not speak until the priest begins the ceremony with his low, measured tone, each word carrying weight as though cast in metal. You stand, you kneel, you stand again, moving not in time to any music you can hear but in time to something you feel deep in your chest, a heartbeat that thrums with the congregation's slow unity. You cross yourself, marking forehead, chest, and shoulders, each touch a reminder that flesh and spirit are bound, and that neither survives well without the other. Rituals mark every threshold in your life. Birth is greeted by the midwife's chant, her voice a soft thread winding through the hush of the birthing chamber. She makes a circle on the earthen floor with salt and ash, a boundary of protection. She washes the mother's belly with oil, warmed by the hearth, and lays sprigs of lavender at her feet to ease pain and welcome new life. When the child emerges, she wraps it immediately in linen, blessed by the priest, whispering its name over its chest so that the syllables root it, firmly in this world of spoken oaths and unseen guardians. Each breath the infant takes is both beginning and covenant, arriving under watchful eyes that know the fragility of life as intimately as they know the promise of renewal. Marriage is accompanied by ritual that spans 3 days, each portion marked by a different ceremony. On the first day, families gather at the bride's home. Each guest places a handful of grain in a communal bowl, symbolizing the joining of households and the hope for fertility in hearth and field. The next morning, the bride's hair is unbound and brushed by the eldest daughter of the village, care taken to untangle knots without breaking a single strand. It is a gesture of goodwill, a wish that the couple's life together be free of snags and pain. The bride's father offers her hand to the groom at the threshold and pours a cup of spiced wine for him to drink, signifying his acceptance of this new union. On the final day, the couple walks together to the chapel or the glade beneath the ancient oak. They step into a circle drawn in chalk and petals, and the priest blesses them with water drawn from the well that never runs dry. Their rings are simple bands of iron or twisted reeds, and they exchange vows spoken not in flourish but in soft, deliberate words that carry the weight of promise through every whispered breath. Death, too, is visited by ritual that honors the passage from this world to the next. The body is washed in water heated by the last ember of the hearth fire, scented with rue and juniper, then wrapped in linen stained with herbs said to guide the spirit. A small loaf of bread and a handful of salt are placed in the coffin, provisions for the journey. Family and friends walk in somber procession to the burial mound or churchyard, torches lit even in daylight to ward off the darkness beyond. The priest intones a final blessing, his voice echoing against stone or wood, and the earth is laid back over the body with gentle hands, each handful a farewell and a vow that memory will keep the departed alive in the hearts of those who remain. Through these rituals, of dawn offerings, of birth and marriage and death, you learn that life here is not measured in years or achievements, but in the cadence of ceremonies that bind you to earth, to each other, and to something vast beyond comprehension. Every act of worship is also an act of remembrance, a remembrance that you are part of a continuum, a thread in a tapestry too grand to see but palpable in each honest breath and each whispered prayer. And in that remembrance you find peace. In this world, every breath carries a whisper of hidden meaning, and every sight or sound may be read as a sign of blessing or warning. The villagers live beneath an invisible tapestry of superstitions, each thread woven from centuries of lived experience and half-remembered lore. You learn early to watch the sky as much as the earth, for the flight of a lone blackbird can foretell misfortune as surely as the blue smoke rising from a hearth signals protection. If a blackbird perches on your roof at dawn, you must sprinkle salt around your doorway before sunrise. Failing to do so invites the restless spirit of night to wander in and steal your dreams. Salt, the purest of minerals, holds power not because it sparkles in the light, but because it tastes of blood and earth and ocean, and thus reminds the unseen world that you stand on firm ground. If you spill salt while cooking, a spoonful must be tossed over your left shoulder in a swift, precise arc, as though you are flinging the misfortune behind you. It is said that the devil lurks just beyond that shoulder, waiting for an invitation. You perform the motion without thought, the knuckle-deep habit of generations, and feel the familiar relief wash over you as the crushed grains scatter. To fail in this small rite is to risk sour milk, broken tools, even the death of livestock, for superstition here is more than quaint custom. It is the language by which the world converses with you beyond your conscious ears. Dawn and dusk are times of particular power, moments when the veil between realms grows thin. At twilight, it is customary to draw a circle of chalk around your doorway and light a single candle, its flame small and steady, to warn any wandering spirits that this house is under your protection. You do not speak the words aloud, but you press your palm against the cool chalk, feeling its dust crumble beneath your fingers, and think the silent prayer. May this light guard us through the night. At dawn, before touching your shoes, you turn them upside down on the doorstep, soles to sky, to confuse any creatures of shadow that might skulk beneath the threshold. It seems foolish to the uninitiated, but here it is second nature, a world where logic and myth coexist in a gentle alliance. Weather itself is read as a tapestry of omens. A sudden gust of wind that rattles the shutters without warning foretells news from afar, perhaps a merchant's arrival or a soldier's march. When the wind dies completely in midday, it predicts illness. A still atmosphere curses the body with stagnation. If thunder rumbles at midnight on a moonless night, the village seer will rise from her straw mattress and draw signs in the dirt, tracing the lines of her palm onto the ground to decipher whether the storm is meant to cleanse or destroy. Sheets of rain that fall in the shape of slanted lines may signal that the harvest will fail unless a sacrifice is made. A loaf of bread placed at the crossroads or prayer offered at the ancient well. Whether such acts truly alter fate remains a mystery, but no one dares abandon the hope that they might. Certain animals carry specific meanings. A white owl seen in the daytime is considered an ill omen, for owls are guardians of the night. If one crosses your path at noon, you must spit 3 times, turn around and retrace your steps backward until you have found a patch of clover or acorn, which you then leave as tribute to the forest spirits. A fox darting through the fields can mean that someone you know bears secret malice, a warning to guard your words and your coins until the fox vanishes beyond sight. Conversely, a hare seen at dawn may be a sign of good fortune in love or wealth. You may collect a handful of fresh grass at its sighting and tuck it inside your shift to carry that blessing with you. Household objects themselves are imbued with omen-like power. A cracked mirror is never discarded, but buried at a crossroads under a new moon, to absorb the fracture's restless energy. Children are taught to never point at a rainbow, for it attracts envy, and to never kill a baby frog, for its spirit will return in a storm to ruin the cattle. When a pair of white gloves is found on the ground, it is believed that fairies have visited, and so the gloves must be cleaned and placed upon the mantle as an offering to ensure the fairies' goodwill. Such deeds may appear small, but in a world where every gesture counts, even the smallest kindness to the unseen can tip the balance toward protection. These beliefs shape daily life in ways both subtle and profound. You carry a sprig of rosemary in your pocket against fever, and if someone belches unexpectedly, you pinch your nose to forestall drunken speech. When you leave the house, you always touch wood to ask silence for good fortune, and when you enter a stable, you throw a measure of grain to the stall floor, whispering gratitude to the animal whose labor sustains you. In whispers and gestures, in salt and chalk, in candles and cracked mirrors, the villagers build a tapestry of protection and warning, stringing together talismans and spoken prayers to navigate a world where unseen forces are as real as rain and sun. And as you walk through the day, you carry these superstitions like soft armor. They do not guarantee safety or banish all fear, but they offer a way to stand in the unknown with a measure of agency. Each ritual, each precaution, becomes a shared story, passed from hand to hand, breath to breath, an unbroken chain of belief that holds the village together, binding the past to the present in a whispery covenant that feels as sturdy as stone. In the hush of evening, when the village hearths have settled to ember glow, and the sky above is a deep expanse of velvet pierced by trembling stars, you gather around the great oak at the edge of the green to hear the old tales unfold. These stories are not mere entertainment. They are the living breath of the land, handed down in voices that tremble like candlelight, weaving a tapestry of wonder and warning that binds every listener to the soil beneath their feet and the sky above their head. You lean against the knotted trunk, its bark rough beneath your fingertips, and listen as the storyteller begins in a voice that carries the weight of half a millennium. "There was a time," she whispers, "before the oldest oak was even a seed, when the world was young and flame flew in fiery arcs across a sky unaccustomed to the blush of dawn. The first humans did not dwell in villages of timber and thatch, but in drifting tribes who followed the great beasts across the plains. One night, as the moon hung low and swollen, a mighty wolf with eyes like molten silver appeared at the edge of camp. Its coat shimmered with the pale glow of starlight, and its howl was neither friend nor foe, but the very echo of the world being born. The wolf walked among the people, never drawing breath, touching noses with mothers and fathers, granting them the gift of vision beyond darkness. It taught them to see by moonlight, to know the way when the sun slept, to hunt and gather with the precision of the earth itself. Then, as dawn painted the sky in trembling ribbons of rose and gold, the wolf vanished, leaving only a single silver hair where it had lain, curled in the grass. That hair, the storyteller continues, was taken by the tribe and woven into a cloak worn only by the wisest among them. In time, the cloak was lost, buried under layers of earth when the tribe moved on, but the tale of the silver wolf lived on, reminding each generation that their sight was never theirs alone, but borrowed from the creatures of the wild and the murmuring cosmos above. Another legend speaks of the river maiden, whose hair shimmered like the surface of water in moonlight. She rose from the depths to console those who wept on the banks, singing soft melodies that eased grief and mended broken hearts. It is said that her song lingers still in the flow of every stream and river, and that if you listen quietly by the water's edge at midnight, you may hear its faint echo carried on the current. But beware, warns the storyteller, for the river maiden's kindness is not without condition. If you try to follow her song into the depths, you may find yourself drawn beneath the water until your lungs remember only the cold embrace of stone. So one must listen, yes, but remain rooted on solid ground, lest mercy become sorrow. In hushed tones, you learn of the hidden court of fairies that dwells beneath the ancient stones of the barrowfield beyond the wood. These diminutive folk live in halls carved from mushroom caps and acorn caps, and they feast on honeycomb and dew-laced petals. They wander the world unseen, collecting lost laughter and idle prayers to sustain their realm. If a mortal child strays too close to their dancing lights at dusk, they may be spirited away to dance forever in the rings of toadstools. Yet they are not malicious. They offer gifts, a polished pebble that brings good fortune, a twisted leaf that ensures a bountiful harvest in exchange for a lock of hair or a borrowed shoe. Mistrust them at your peril, but do not scorn them, for they hold the memory of the world before humans built walls and roofs and named each tree. There is also the tale of the blacksmith who forged a sword so true that it sang in the air when, swung, he labored for 7 days and 7 nights without sleep, breathing hammer sparks into the metal until it gleamed like lightning trapped in iron. When it was finished, he presented it to the local lord, who drew it once and cut the silk, banner in two as though it were water. But pride warped the lord's heart, and he refused to share the blade's blessing with his soldiers. One moonless night, in a dream that felt like a blade against his soul, the blacksmith's spirit returned, seizing the sword and carrying it to the mountain top. There it stands now, half buried in rock, waiting for a hand both humble and brave to draw it again. Many have sought it, but find nothing but cold stone and the silence of the high wind. These myths thread through village life like silver filigree, shaping the way you move through the world. At harvest, you leave a small portion of grain by the tree where the wolf's hair fell, a gesture of thanks for sight and stealth. When a child is born, you cradle a vase of river water beneath her crib in hopes the maiden's song will ease her first cries. On Midsummer's Eve, you scatter wildflowers at the entrance to your home to honor the fairy court and invite their quiet blessings. Many search the mountain passes for the blacksmith's sword in secret, though none admit this aloud, for seeking glory is frowned upon. But in dreams you feel its call, a lullaby of thunder, urging you to remember that true strength is forged in humility. As the storyteller's voice softens and the last flicker of torchlight dies, you rise from the damp grass, your heart full of wonder and respect. You carry these legends with you like precious stones tucked in your sleeve, each one a reminder that the world holds secrets beyond the horizon, and that in every whispered tale there lies guidance for the living. You return home beneath the watch of silent stars, feeling the quiet weight of story settle in your chest, certain that these myths will accompany you through waking hours and dreams alike, a gentle compass guiding your steps in a world both known and unfathomable. You carry the weight of every ache in your bones as a gentle reminder that the body is both fragile vessel and steadfast instrument, capable of bearing burdens that the mind can scarcely imagine. In the 1400s, medicine is woven from threads of observation, lore, and whispered prayers, each strand as vital as the others. There are no sterile chambers or polished steel tools here, only the rough-hewn world of wood and clay and herb. Healing is practiced in the soft hush of hearthside gatherings and in the hushed footsteps that lead you to the midwife's door, a sanctuary where the line between science and magic is as thin as a catgut suture. When you are ill, the first remedy is often the simplest. Rest. Your body is believed to possess its own wisdom, an innate power to restore balance if given time and stillness. You wrap yourself in layers of linen and wool as though swaddling a newborn, and lie upon your straw bed while a small fire burns low nearby to warm the air without overwhelming your head with smoke. A bowl of barley water, sweetened with honey, and steeped with bruised sage leaves, is placed within reach. You sip it slowly, feeling the warmth spread through your chest and pool in your belly, a soft reassurance that nature is at work within you. Should rest and barley water prove insufficient, you turn to the apothecary's brass-bound chest, its drawers labeled in faded ink. Inside you find bundles of dried herbs, yarrow for fevers, chamomile for frayed nerves, plantain for cuts and bruises, and comfrey for bones that groan under strain. To the uninitiated, these plants are no more than weeds. To those who tend, The sick, they are silent allies. A poultice of crushed plantain leaves and lard is applied to sprains, held in place with strips of linen and bound gently so that swelling cannot gain ground. A tea of elderflower and meadowsweet eases fevers, its sweet aroma promising relief even before the bitter liquid touches your lips. And a handful of lavender beneath your pillow sends lullabies to your shoulders, urging them to loosen their grip on pain. Bloodletting, though feared in other lands, is practiced here with measured caution. A small lancet, its blade honed to a delicate point on a whetstone by candlelight, is pressed against the vein in your arm or leg. A leather cup is heated in the flame until it draws the air from the skin, then quickly placed over the opening to draw the blood upward. A single dram is taken, never more, for the belief holds that excess blood carries toxins, but that too much removal will leave the body weakened. The sensation is a distant tug rather than a sharp pain, and once the cup is removed, your arm rests. Under a cloth soaked with wine and myrrh to prevent infection, you lie still as the midwife or barber surgeon binds the wound, her fingers steady with the confidence born of countless repetitions. When bones break or joints wrench, you are carried. To the bone setter, a figure part healer, part artist. He lays you upon a wooden bench carved with the impressions of those who came before. With gentle pressure and the guidance of whispers, both his own and those of unseen spirits, he realigns the fracture, listening to the subtle creaks and shifts as though deciphering a hidden language. He binds the limb with splints made of willow and linen, winding them tightly but not so tight as to cut off life's current. Weeks of immobilization follow, during which you lie surrounded by sachets of sealing herbs, rosemary, thyme, rue, to keep infection at bay and to lend strength to bones knitting back together. When the mind falters under the weight of sorrow, or fear or grief, there is a healer for that as well, a wise woman or priestess who blends oil of roses with valerian and a drop of laudanum distilled from poppy. She anoints your temples and the hollow of your throat, murmuring humble invocations to saints and spirits alike. You inhale the scent as though breathing in a prayer, and you feel the tight band of anxiety around your chest loosen, unraveling, thread by thread, until your thoughts drift on soft currents toward a calmer shore. Childbirth is the most sacred of all medical moments, and the midwife is both physician and priestess in that chamber of earth and candlelight. She arrives with baskets of herbs, angelica to strengthen the womb, mugwort to ease pain, catnip to soothe spasms, and with strips of linen boiled in water and salt. Her hands, steady and practiced, know where to press to ease labor and where to gently pull when the child crowns. She murmurs blessings under her breath, sounding like distant bells tolling for hope. After the birth, she washes the mother with warm water scented with rue, and then tucks the newborn into linen wrapped in an amulet pouch embroidered with tiny crosses and runes for protection. Yet for all these remedies, illness remains both mysterious and formidable. The plague, when it visits, arrives like a thief in the night, and even the wisest healers can only offer solace. Houses are marked with a red cross of chalk to warn neighbors, and those afflicted are tended at home, surrounded by rue and garlic bulbs strung above doors and the constant tolling of prayer bells to ward off the dark. Families isolate themselves, weaving bread through the doorway to sustain the afflicted, leaving bowls of broths that steam in the cold air. It is as much a ritual of love as of medicine, a declaration that even in the face of death, compassion breathes warmly. In this era, healing is an art of empathy as much as of herbs and splints. The practitioner's voice is soft, their movements deliberate. They bear witness to pain without flinching, and they offer the patient not only poultices and decoctions, but the blessing of calm presence. For in a world where fate and the unseen collide, the greatest medicine may be the steady hand that holds yours and the reassurance that you are neither cursed nor abandoned, but woven into a tapestry of care that spans generations and realms, both natural and divine. In the 1400s, death is not an ending but a passage, a transition from one realm of existence to another. It is neither feared nor celebrated, but met with a solemn ritual that weaves together grief, reverence, and hope. When a life draws its final breath, the hearth fire is banked so that smoke curls gently into the rafters rather than roaring skyward. Doors are left open just enough for the departing spirit to glide outward, and windows are unlatched so that the first breath of dawn can guide the soul toward its new horizon. No bell tolls in alarm. Instead, the church bell, if one stands nearby, is struck once with deliberate slowness, a single knell that vibrates through stone and flesh alike. The body is washed with water warmed over the hearth, scented with rue, and juniper to ward off lingering shadows. A thin linen sheet, woven from flax grown in the village fields, is laid beneath the corpse, and then the body is wrapped in its gentle folds. No wax or perfume masks the scent of life spent. Rather, the midwife or healer sprinkles the linen with a handful of dried lavender and thyme, believed to soothe the spirit's journey and calm the grief of those who remain. A small loaf of bread and a pinch of salt are placed in the shroud, folds, provisions for the soul's hunger and thirst in the world beyond. These simple offerings speak of the belief that the afterlife mirrors this world in shape and hunger, and that kindness extended in death may ripple through eternity. Family and neighbors gather for the vigil, sitting in silence on rough benches or leaning against the walls of the dwelling. Their faces are lit by flickering tallow candles placed on low tables and window ledges, their flames steady but trembling as though they too bear sorrow's weight. There is no shouting of grief, no wailing in chorus. Tears are shed quietly, heads bowed, hands held in each other's grasp. Some recite psalms in low tones, not for the sake of ceremony but as a soft refrain to rock the spirit toward rest. Others allow a single hymn, sung without accompaniment, its melody as fragile as the wings of a moth, to float between living and dead until it dissolves in the hush. At first light, the procession forms. A simple bier carries the shrouded body, draped in a cloth dyed with muted blue or gray, the colors of twilight and dawn. Mourners follow on foot, walking the narrow lanes beneath low branches heavy with dew. There are no horses for most. The journey is an act of solidarity, each step a testament to life shared. If the ground is frozen or waterlogged, wooden planks are laid as makeshift pathways so that the bier moves with respectful ease. Children walk at the rear, carrying small lanterns or sprigs of rosemary, their shoulders straight despite their years, learning from this solemn march the gravity of absence and the need for memory. The burial takes place on consecrated ground, either a churchyard plowed by souls long past, or a burial mound beneath ancient oaks whose roots have pierced countless layers of earth. The grave is dug by strong hands and measured so that the shroud touches no stone, for the belief holds that a spirit disturbed by rock will wander in sorrow. As the coffin is lowered, each mourner approaches in turn, placing a handful of earth. Upon the wood, clay, loam, grit, each grain a personal farewell. Some add sprigs of evergreen or rosemary atop the shroud, a promise that remembrance remains evergreen even as flesh returns to dust. A final blessing is offered by the priest or elder, his voice a soft thunder in the quiet. He sprinkles holy water in gentle arcs and traces the sign of the cross upon the earth. He speaks not of judgment, but of welcome, inviting the departed into a realm where pain no longer scratches at the edges of the soul. Then the earth falls in a soft avalanche of grains, covering the coffin until only the mound remains, smooth and rounded like the crescent moon at dawn. Afterward, mourners gather under the shade of a nearby tree or within the home of the deceased, sharing simple food, a thin stew of barley and root vegetables, a loaf of bread broken in halves, bowls of watered ale. These provisions are offered not in mourning alone, but as affirmation of life's continuity. that those who live must eat, must speak, must remember. Stories are told in low voices, of kindness the departed showed, of humor that eased the darkest, moments of a gentle strength that lingered like a soft hymn. In these recollections the person lives again, not as absence, but as presence woven into memory. For 40 days, prayers and small offerings continue. On the 3rd, the 7th, and the 40th day, family and neighbors leave fresh bread at the grave, light candles at the edge of the mound, and recite psalms at dawn and dusk. These acts are meant to guide the soul through liminal spaces, from its first hours of disorientation to its final resting place in the fields beyond time. After the 40th day, the formal vigil ends, but remembrance does not. The anniversary of death becomes a quiet marker each year, a season when rosemary is pressed between book pages, when a candle flickers longer by the hearth, and when hearts renew the covenant of memory. Here, death is neither terror nor trivial. It is the final chapter of a story that began long before birth and will continue in the hearts of those who remain. It is met with ritual and reverence, with herbs and hymns, with bread and salt. And in its gentle unfolding, you learn that every ending is also a beginning, an entrance into a realm of shadows and light, where souls are tended with the same care they received in life, where memory becomes the sacred thread that binds past to present, mortal to infinite. In every village there is a soul who dances on the edge of reason, a fool, a trickster, an outsider whose laughter is both gift and reckoning. His name is neither praised nor scrawled on charters. It is spoken with a mixture of amusement and pity, for he moves through the world untethered, like a leaf caught in a playful breeze. You first encounter him at dawn, lingering near the well, where he kneels to scoop water with cupped hands and then splashes more upon his own face than into his bucket. His hair is long and tangled, the color of unripe wheat, and his eyes are bright with mischief and sorrow in equal measure. No one quite knows whether to shoo him away or share their own portion of porridge, but he remains, a gentle constant in the cycles of village life. He wears motley tunics stitched from cast-off garments, patches of russet against drab brown, a scrap of green here, a ribbon of blue there, none of it matching, yet somehow becoming him. Around his neck dangles a string of wooden beads carved with crude symbols whose meaning he neither explains nor recalls. The children fear him and follow at a cautious distance, for his laughter can crack open the sky or crumble like rotten wood, and they do not know which will come. When he speaks, his voice shifts unpredictably, soft as wind through barley or loud as the church bell, so that even the hardest of villagers cannot be certain whether they are being mocked or blessed. Despite his oddness, he is woven into the village's stories. They credit him with guiding lost children back from the woods by his whistle that sounds like owl lament. They curse him when milk sours or eggs break inside their shells, for he was seen near the hen house at dawn. They say that if you catch his eye and hold it without blinking, you will glimpse truths too heavy for waking minds, secrets about the land's old wounds, about shadows that walk just beyond candlelight, about burdens you carry without knowing. And yet no one seeks him for wisdom. To do so would betray a fear that the fool knows more than the wise men of the manor. One winter morning, when snow lay thick on the roofs and the world was hushed as a whisper, he appeared at the door of the midwife, carrying a small bundle wrapped in ragged cloth. Inside lay a sparrow whose wing was broken, feathers dusted white with frost. He watched her eyes soften as she cradled the bird, murmuring words that smelled of heated stones and herbs. The fool waited, silent, shoulder to shoulder with loss, until she fashioned a splint from a twig and bound it with strips of linen. When she handed the bird back, he kissed its head gently, then set it on the windowsill where the sun fell weakest. He vanished before the first chirp of healing rose within the sparrow's breast. Another afternoon, in spring, he strolled into the fields where the peasants were bent beneath sheaves of grain. He carried with him a small musical box of his own, making simple tines of iron hammered flat and fastened to a wooden plank. He tapped the box with a piece of flint, and a tremulous melody emerged, threading through the fields and lifting weary heads. The workers paused, shifting shoulders blinking against the sun, and the melody coaxed their spines straight. For a moment there was no lord's claim upon their labor, no fear of punishment for slowing the reaper's scythe. There was only that trembling tune and the gentle realization that their own heartbeat was as necessary as the harvest itself. He is not trusted, and yet he belongs. When disputes arise, over land boundaries, over payment in coin or grain, he wanders among the quarreling parties, whispering indeterminate truths that leave both sides uncertain and therefore unwilling to strike. He never takes sides. Instead, he holds up a mirror of folly. You, he seems to say, are as absurd as I am. And laughter follows, soft and rueful, erasing rancor like a stone dropped in a still pond. On Midsummer's Eve, he hosts a peculiar ceremony by the old oak. He curls a ring of salt upon the ground, lights a handful of burning herbs, and invites anyone curious enough to join. He dances within the circle, feet bare, cloak swirling, calling out names of spirits who have never walked these fields. His voice dips into falsetto, then deepens into a chant that vibrates through the oak's roots. Some villagers watch from a distance, heads bowed, uncertain whether to join or flee. Yet, one by one, the bold cross the salt line, joining his dance until laughter breaks through fear and every person is both clown and court, trickster and witness. When he moves on, as inevitably he does when the wind shifts, you may find his motley tunic hanging on a fence post, or his wooden beads caught in the brambles. Perhaps you will discover a small stone at your doorstep, smooth and cool, carved with a symbol you do not recognize. You may ponder its meaning through the seasons, and each reading will shift like sunlight on water. The fool has left behind a question, or perhaps a blessing. What is sanity in a world shaped by hunger, by mourning, by faith, by unseen forces that laugh as easily as they punish? If you can hold that question without fear, you are part of his quiet legacy. You are the fool he respects, the one who listens to laughter even when the world demands tears, who finds solace in the absurd, who understands that sometimes only a broken tune can mend a broken heart. In every settlement there stands a figure whose presence shapes the very air, whose word is carried on the wind like a summons. In your village it is the priest whose robes are as dark as damp stone, and whose voice rings with the authority of unseen realms. He moves through the hamlet at dawn, lantern in hand, his steps measured and deliberate. Villagers pause in their tasks, women bent over laundry, men guiding oxen, sensing that his passage presses the day into a moment of reverence. He is neither distant nor familiar, a threshold between the earthly and the divine, a living bridge whose gaze weighs both sin and grace without mercy for either. His chamber is a small annex built against the church wall, narrow and cool, lit by high windows that filter in light like water through moss. The simple wooden desk bears a single candle stub and a stack of parchment scrolls sealed with wax, each bearing the names of those who seek absolution or judgment. Villagers approach in silence, kneeling on the chilly floor with heads bowed, until he speaks a word that rises like incense, releasing them from guilt or commissioning them to penance. His counsel is not casual. Each syllable is carved into the conscience, lingering like incense smoke long after it fades. He rises each morning before the birds and stands at the church door, his tall form swathed in wool and linen, breathing on cold stone as he recites prayers without sound. His lips move, but the words are private vestiges of devotion. He stokes the small furnace beneath the altar, rekindling the flame that burns through each service, a symbol of steadfast faith. When the bell tolls, his gloved hand contacts the clapper, and the sound vibrates through the village, a summons to gather and confess the quiet failings of the soul, harboring anger, speaking ill, coveting what belongs to another. At midday, he moves among the sick and the weary, his presence a balm more potent than any herb. He carries a bag of chrism oil and sprigs of holy salt, anointing foreheads with crosses that burn briefly into the skin. The ritual is more than a blessing. It is an act of binding the fragile body to eternity, a whisper of hope in places where bones ache and spirits tremble. Those he touches believe they carry divine protection in their veins, a shield against fever, against sorrow, against the dark whisperings of night. When disputes arise over land or labor, the villagers seek the priest's judgment as though it were scripture. He listens, seated on a simple bench in the shade of the churchyard, his hood drawn low. He hears testimony from both parties, his ears attuned to truth and deception, not by body language but by the subtle weight of confession. Then he speaks. His verdict with quiet firmness, assigning restitution in grain or labor, or pronouncing exile from communal rights until reconciliation is achieved. The decree is final, for defying it invites spiritual sanction worse than any earthly penalty. At dusk, he presides over vespers in the candlelit nave, the soft glow illuminating carved wooden saints whose painted eyes seem to watch the congregation, with sympathy and judgment. His chant flows slowly, each note a droplet of devotion that pools in the silent rafters. The villagers stand as one body, repeating responses that echo like distant thunder. In this shared ritual, you sense both unity and hierarchy. Every soul equal before the divine, yet all under the guiding hand of the priest whose steady chant unmasks unrest and guides each breath into the quiet cadence of worship. Behind closed doors, rumor murmurs that the priest is not born of noble blood but of poor stock, a foundling discovered at the church door as an infant. They say his devotion sprang from gratitude, that he serves not for power but for mercy, seeking to atone for debts he cannot name. His eyes, dark and unfathomable, betray the weight of isolation. He does not join in laughter or song. He dines in solitude at a small wooden table draped in white linen, eating plain bread and watered ale in silence that echoes the desert fathers whose lives he emulates. Yet his care for the people is unwavering. He visits families in night watches, holding vigil beside the dying, offering a hand to grasp when breath falters. He hears the whispered prayers of widows who fear the coming winter, and he gathers alms of grain from the modest stores of the faithful to share with those whose fields yielded little. He visits the orphaned and the fatherless, guiding them into apprenticeships or tending to their wounds, his compassion extending beyond words to action that makes hope tangible. When festival days arrive, Michaelmas, Candlemas, the feast of saints, the priest leads processions through the village lanes. He carries relics wrapped in fine cloth, a fragment of a saint's bone, a curl of hair preserved in a silver vial. The villagers bow as he passes, their eyes lifted in awe and supplication, feeling the barrier between the holy and the mundane grow thin. Each relic is a source of grace, a conduit for miracles small and large. They press their palms to the reliquary, believing that in that brief touch they may carry a spark of the sacred into the rest of their lives. In the hush of night, long after the candles gutter and the parish sleeps, the priest remains at his desk, penning letters in careful calligraphy. He writes to distant bishops and neighboring abbeys, bargaining for support, requesting alms, arranging for the education of a promising child. His reach extends beyond the village, weaving a network of faith that binds this small community to the vast tapestry of Christendom. He is the village's voice in the wider world, its advocate and guardian in the councils of the pious. He holds power that mingles law and grace, judgment and mercy, woven so tightly that neither can be unraveled without tearing the fabric of life itself. You sense that to cross him is to court both ecclesiastical censure and communal scorn. Yet to earn his favor is to carry his blessing into every dawn and every dusk, wrapped like a cloak against fear of both earthly and eternal storms. In his presence you feel the weight of unseen worlds, the pull of promise and peril entwined, as the priest stands ever ready to bridge the chasm between mortal longing and divine mystery. You may not think much of the man who greets you at the edge of the rye field, his back bent beneath a heavy basket of grain, his hands calloused and rimmed with dirt. Yet his story carries the slow weight of seasons and the quiet dignity of survival. He is the son of serfs, born in a one-room hovel, of wattle and daub, his first breath mingling with the smell of damp straw and the low grunts of the sow that nestles beside his mother. He learned to walk before most children could speak, navigating uneven floorboards and ravenous piglets, and he learned to speak before he could read, fashioning words in the cadence of clucking hens and bleating lambs. From the moment he could lift a spade, he was taught that earth yields only what it is commanded to give. His father worked the Lord's domain, turning furrows with a plow drawn by oxen that moved at his whispered curses and gentle prods. The fields stretched in endless folds of green and gold, a living tapestry that demanded both reverence and relentless toil. In spring, he scattered seed with stooped precision, his arm tracing arcs that mirrored the flight of birds overhead. In summer, he bent to pull weeds, uprooting each clump with a soft tug and a quiet apology, as though the earth beneath clung to every root with a mother's devotion. In harvest, he swung the sickle in time with the wind, each cut a note in the harvest hymn, the swaying stalks murmuring their own farewell to sun and rain. He speaks of hunger not as an abstract notion, but as a companion that once sat at his shoulder and whispered in his ear, its voice thin as wind through a keyhole. He remembers days when the granary was empty, and every crumb felt like a treasure. Children collected acorns and roasted them in ashes for a bitter porridge. Wild berries stained their tongues purple, and nettles were plucked and boiled into soup. He learned to savor the sour tang of fermented cider, its sharp edge both warming and dizzying, reminding him that even hardship held moments of fleeting sweetness. Yet his most vivid memory is of the spring when the rains failed to come. He was 15 then, tall enough to see over the furrows and old enough to taste despair in his mother's tears. The wheat bowed in wilting brown, and the goat's milk grew thin. Families walked to the well day after day, buckets empty, faces drawn. He and his sister knelt in the cracked earth, digging for moisture with their hands until their nails broke. They scooped handfuls of dry clay into their mouths, licking the flecks of dampness that clung to the cracks in their palms. In that moment, he learned that hope is as essential as hunger, a flame that must not be allowed to die, even when all else withers. When the rains finally returned, gentle and persistent, the fields sighed in relief. The peasants gathered to reap the grain, their sickles ringing against stone like distant bells. The harvest was meager, but it was enough. They baked flat cakes of barley and honey, breaking them under the noon sun and sharing each brittle piece as though it were precious metal. Laughter returned in small doses. Children chased one another beneath arches of grain, and elders nodded at each other in quiet acknowledgment that they had survived another season. He met his wife in the village at Michaelmas, where the air was thick with the scent of roasting meats and juniper smoke. She was selling lace she had spun by lamplight, her fingers swift and sure. He watched as her slender hands guided the fine thread through holes of carved bone, forming patterns that seemed too delicate for a world of toil. He offered to carry her basket home, and she accepted with a faint smile that bloomed like a shy flower. Their courtship was slow, marked by whispers beneath the old oak and quiet visits to the well, where they drew water side by side without speaking, learning the weight of each other's silence. Marriage brought new burdens, and new joys. Their first child came in the dead of winter, its cry echoing against frozen walls. The midwife arrived with fire and herbs, chanting prayers that filled the small room with warmth. The child's cries were fierce, but neither parent screamed. They knelt together, hands clasped over the infant's body, and offered thanks that another life would continue their line. In that moment, he understood the paradox of joy and pain, how they could coexist at the same time, each giving the other meaning. Now, as he fills his basket at dawn, the years have etched furrows into his brow that mirror the fields he tends. He stands a little straighter at moments of triumph and a little more heavily at moments of loss. The death of his sister to fever, the ruined harvest after a spring frost, the ache of watching his children grow too quickly. But he carries on, guided by the knowledge that the land endures beyond any single lifetime, that each seed sown is both an act of faith and a testament to memory. He lifts his face to the sky, letting the sun warm his skin, and you see that his eyes hold not just fatigue but something deeper, a calm patience born of seasons endured, of hunger quelled and sorrow acknowledged. His tale is not heroic in the way of kings and knights. It is the quiet courage of those who stand beneath the sweep of sky and storm alike, who wake each morning to coax nourishment from soil that asks everything and gives back, in time, exactly what it promised. And as you listen, you feel the rhythm of his life echo in your own breath, the steady inhale of hope, the slow exhale of gratitude, the silent vow to return to the land and honor its gifts. Season after season, year after year, whisper after whisper until your own story becomes woven into the tapestry of all that was, all that is, and all that will be. You awaken before dawn in the rented room above the stables, the faint scent of hay and horse scent clinging to the rough linens. Your ledger lies open on the narrow table beside the small window, its columns of sums and scribbled notes, waiting like silent questions. You rise, shaking off the last tendrils of sleep, and dress in clothing that balances function with appearance. A linen shift beneath a dyed wool doublet of deep brown, leather breeches, and stout boots shod with iron nails for long roads. Around your neck hangs a small pouch containing scales, weights, and a handful of silver pennies, tools of your trade and the delicate heartbeat of your livelihood. You step into the stable corridor, where the air is damp and warm. The horses shift in their stalls, lowing softly as you pass, and you pause to brush the mane of the gray mare you will ride today. Your hands move with practiced ease. Combed the tangles from her forelock, checked the softness of her muzzle, adjusted the leather strap of her bridle. Each motion is gentle but assured, a silent negotiation of trust between rider and beast. When the mare is ready, you lead her out into the pale light of morning, the horizon just beginning to glow with washed-out rose. You load your pack-saddle with bolts of cloth, fine linen from Flanders, dyed blue and woad, and coarse hemp from closer fields, plus small crates of glass beads, iron nails, and a cask of spiced wine from the south. You secure each bundle tightly, tying with ropes knotted in patterns that will not slip under the jostle of the road. Your merchant's box, a strong oak case, carries your most precious goods, an ivory comb carved with tiny roses, silver filigree buttons, and a small handful of pearls that catch stray sunlight in the dark. Straddling your mare, you lift the merchant's box into the front pannier and cinch your leather belt over it. You tighten your gauntlets, checking that your purse hangs at your hip, accessible yet secure. Then you urge the mare forward, the rhythm of her hooves soft upon the dirt road, leading you away from the clustered thatch of the village and into the rolling countryside. Your path takes you past tilled fields where peasants bend to plow and sow, their silhouettes dark against the haze of dawn. You nod in greeting, tipping your hat, and they return the motion with heads bowed, recognizing the merchant's passage as both promise and imposition. Be mid-morning, you arrive at the ford where you must cross the river. Its current tumbles over, stones, white and frothy, and the mare hesitates at the water's edge. You dismount, loosen the straps of your pack, and lead her carefully through the shallows, feeling the cold river tug at your ankles and listening to the gurgle of water over rock. Once across, you resecure your load and mount again, lifting your eyes to the road ahead, a ribbon of dust cutting through fields of barley that sway like waves. Your first stop is the market town at the crossroads, where stallholders peddle cheese, dried fish, furs, and pottery. You tether the mare near the central well, then approach the cloth merchant whose stall is draped in swaths of dyed fabrics. You unfasten the merchant's box and lift out bolts of the fine linen. You display them on a wooden trestle, their edges fluttering in the breeze like banners of color. Beside you, a glassblower's apprentice holds out small vials of colored beads. You measure grains of silver on your scales, dropping coins into the leather purse until the weight is exact, then hand them over for lengths of vibrant cloth and strings of beads that will catch the eye of clients back home. You barter with measured politeness, never too eager, never abrupt. You note the purchaser's gaze, the way fingers brush the fabric, the slight crease between brows when the price is high. You adjust your demands in small increments, softening the ask when the buyer hesitates, firming it when they show desire. Each transaction is a delicate dance, requiring balance between profit and trust. You offer a handful of glass beads as a gift, an investment in future goodwill, and watch as the buyer's lips curve in appreciation, the color returning to their cheeks. By afternoon, your packs are lighter and your purse heavier. You leave the market and set out again, riding toward the next village where news travels slowly but needs and desires travel swiftly. En route, you pass abbey lands where monks tend bees and press apples for cider. You pause at the abbey gate, offering a small donation in exchange for a flask of honey wine to sweeten your journey. The abbot nods, his robes brushing the dusty ground, and you share a silent acknowledgement. You, a merchant dependent on others' craftsmanship. He, a man of prayer dependent on divine grace and the labor of novices. As twilight approaches, you reach the walled burg where your final deals of the day await. You unload the remaining cloth and beads before the burgess, a stern man whose tolls fill the coffers of the town. He weighs your goods and collects his share, speaking in clipped tones that leave no room for argument. You pay with ease, preferring good relations over small savings, knowing that a merchant remembered fondly is welcomed more warmly on the morrow. Your mare is tired, her flanks damp with sweat. You lead her to the stables you have prearranged, better accommodations than the roadside inns, and let her drink her fill. You settle the stable hand with a handful of coins and a promise of future trade in oats and barley. Then you climb the wooden steps to your lodging above, where a simple meal of bread, cheese, and an egg awaits you, laid out by the innkeeper's wife. You eat slowly, tasting each morsel as though it were a fine wine, knowing that tomorrow you will swallow porridge without thought. Before sleep claims you, you close your ledger by the flickering candlelight and tally the day's gains. The numbers rise in neat columns, pennies earned for bolts sold, debts owed, coin spent on tolls and gifts. You touch your purse, feeling its reassuring weight, and whisper a quiet prayer of thanks for safe passage and fair exchange. Your mind drifts to the road ahead, to the miles to come, to the endless cycle of trade and barter that weaves you into the fabric of countless lives. As you lay down, the mare's soft whinny drifts up through the floorboards. You imagine her, dream of open fields, of rain-washed grass, of distant horizons. And you, too, drift between wakefulness and sleep, your thoughts filled with cloth and beads, with coinier balances and nods of respect, with the promise that each dawn will bring new roads to travel and new stories to weave into the tapestry of your wandering life. You arrive at the village inn when the moon hangs low above the thatched roofs, a pale lantern against the dark. Your travel cloak is damp from evening mist, and your boots carry the scent of distant roads, heather hewn by wind, wood smoke from half-forgotten campfires, and the tang of salt where rivers meet the sea. You make your way to a corner table near the hearth, where the innkeeper flicks a candle flame to light your way. You sit heavily on the wooden bench, close enough to feel the heat of the fire against your back, and you watch the flames dance before you. They cast shifting shapes on the walls, shadows that seem to move with intent as though they bear witness to the secrets you have carried across leagues of land. You order a tankard of watered ale, and as the innkeeper pours, you feel the familiar knot tighten in your chest. You are a traveler, but you are not one who walks without burden. You carry memories that press against your mind, woven of loss and longing, of choices made under a sky of stars and roads traveled alone in the dark. The ale arrives, its surface frothy and pale, and you lift it to your lips, tasting the bitterness like a confession on your tongue. You set the tankard down, the wood ringing softly, and inhale the scent of hops and grain, giving yourself permission to settle into the vulnerability of this place. It is not the ale that loosens your tongue. It is the hush of the inn, the way the other patrons have quieted in respect of the fire's hush. You lean forward, elbows braced on the table, and you begin to speak, not with the urgency of the city you left behind, but with the measured weight of someone who has carried a confession across mountains and marshes. You speak of the day when you found yourself standing at the crossroads of fate. You had been hired to deliver a sealed letter to a noble's steward, a simple task, or so you believed. But on the road, you discovered that the letter contained demands for troops and ransom, orders that would pit your employer's forces against innocents you had grown to care for in a border settlement. You realized then that your journey was not one of mere coin, but of conscience. You felt the blade of compromise press against your heart, urging you to obey in order to survive, or to defy in order to remain whole. Your voice grows quieter as you describe the moment you paused beneath the gnarled oak where two roads diverged. You watched the sun filter through mossy branches and thought of the child you had once cared for, whose laughter sounded like wind through wheat stalks. You thought of the widows whose tear-wet faces you had seen at dawn prayers. You knew that. To deliver the letter meant blood on your hands. And so you tore the seal, read the words, and then burned the parchment in a handful of tinder beneath the oak's roots. You scattered the ashes to the wind and chose the harder road. You turned your back on a promise of payment and left a trail of smoke and ash where the letter once lay. You speak of the weeks that followed, when you traveled barefoot through wet fields to avoid recognition, when you scavenged at abbeys for bread, when you slept under starlit skies without knowing whether dawn would find you alive or hunted. You describe the night when a group of soldiers found you near the riverbank, their torches flickering against the water. You did not fight. You simply offered your confession in the hush before the swords could be drawn. You told them the truth of the letter, the betrayal of the noble you had served. Some lowered their blades. Some walked away without word. A few escorted you across the river to a hermit's hut, where you spent days in solitude, tending the hermit's goats, learning the rhythm of goat bells and humming psalms that echoed through your memory. As you near the end of your confession, your hands rest on the edge of the table, knuckles white against the grain. You speak of how you came here, to this inn, seeking not absolution, but understanding. You are neither hero nor villain, you say, just a traveler who followed the thread of his own heart, even when it led him away from easy paths. You have no desire to be remembered in song or story. You only wish to find a place where your burden may be eased by the simple act of speaking it aloud, by offering your truth to strangers who may judge you or may merely listen. The innkeeper approaches with a fresh tankard of ale, his eyes reflecting the firelight and something like respect. You lift the new drink in silent thanks, feeling its coolness slide down your throat, carrying away the last bitter echoes of regret. The patrons around you return to their own meals and murmurs, and yet you sense a shift in the air, a quiet acceptance that your confession has taken root in this room, has been carried by the crackle of the fire to places beyond its walls. You finish your ale, rise unsteadily, and stretch limbs stiff from the road. You step outside into the night, the cold air a balm against your skin. The moon has climbed higher, and its light washes the village green in silver. You pause beneath, the same gnarled oak that guided your choice so many days ago. You press your palm to the bark, feeling the rough grooves beneath your fingers, and you whisper a final vow, to move forward without the weight of lies, to carry only truth and the hope that each dawn will find you truer to your own path. Then, you continue on your way, leaving behind the inn and its flickering hearth, carrying within you the quiet freedom that comes when a confession, long kept, is finally spoken aloud. Late one summer afternoon, a traveling scholar arrived in the village, his robes freshly laundered and his quill neatly tucked behind one ear. He carried with him an air of solemn knowledge and a satchel of leather-bound books brimming with Latin passages and philosophical treatises. The villagers regarded him with curiosity and caution, for scholars were rare in these parts, and when they did appear, they often spoke of mysteries best left undisturbed. The scholar requested lodgings at the inn and a room by the window so that he might copy his texts by daylight. The innkeeper obliged, showing him a modest chamber with a narrow bed and a rough wooden table set beneath a shuttered casement. The scholar smiled politely, unpacking his books and setting them in a neat stack. He then produced a small pewter inkwell, filled it from a flask of water he had carried from the city, and began to write. That very evening, as the sun sank behind the hills, the inn's patron cat, a sleek creature with mottled fur, slipped through the half-open door and padded into the chamber. Drawn by the scholar's steady scratching of quill on parchment, the cat leapt onto the table and then onto the scholar's lap, purring loudly. The scholar, startled, attempted to push the cat away, but in his haste he knocked the inkwell from its stand. Ink spilled across the table, across the open book, and dripped in slow, inky beads onto the floorboards. The scholar exclaimed in Latin, a string of words that rattled like harsh stones in the quiet room. Embarrassed, he fished the cat from his lap and held it aloft by its scruff, intending to set it outside. But the cat, alarmed, scratched his wrist, tearing a slender gash. The scholar squealed, a sound so high-pitched and desperate that it startled the few guests lingering in the common room below. He danced across the chamber, clutching his bleeding hand, sending his book scattering like startled birds. More calamity followed. In his panic, the scholar stumbled backward into the bed frame, toppling it against the wall with a crack that shook plaster and wood. The mattress spilled onto the floor, springs and straw rolling free. His quill flew from his ear and slid under the bed, and as he reached to retrieve it, he kicked the candle from its iron sconce. The flame spluttered across the tablecloth, igniting the edge of his sleeve. In a frenzy, he beat at his robe, yanking it off and sending it aloft into a tangle of books and papers. He stood there, bare-armed and breathing fast, one hand bleeding, the other extinguishing smoldering cloth, and his face pale as chalk. Downstairs, footsteps thundered up the stairs. The innkeeper arrived at the open door, lantern in hand, to find the scholar standing amid the wreckage of his own making. The chamber smelled of smoke and ink and cat fur. The scholar pointed at himself, then at the cat, and then at the spilled books, stammering in a mix of Latin and broken vernacular. The innkeeper took in the scene with a patient calm. He opened a window wide, tossed the cat onto the sill where it limped away into the gathering dusk and produced a basin of water and clean cloths. He bandaged the scholar's wrist with linen and soothed his nerves with a mug of ale warmed over the hearth. He then set to work gathering the scattered pages, laying them gently on a plank resting across two stools. He brushed the ink blotches with damp cloth, absorbing excess without tearing the fragile parchment. He salvaged the scholar's robe from its singed heap, patting away smoldering threads and setting it aside to air in the moonlight. Throughout the ordeal, the scholar stood sheepishly, cheeks aflame, muttering apologies that rose and fell like a wounded bird's wing. The innkeeper did not scold. He simply offered quiet reassurance. "Such things happen even to the best of us," he said, wiping soot from the scholar's hands. The scholar nodded gratefully, eyes glistening with relieved tears, and vowed never to trust a cat or a precariously placed candle again. By midnight, the scholar was sewn back together with clean bandages, his books restacked, and his robe draped neatly over the chair. He dipped his quill into fresh ink from a clay pot supplied by the innkeeper and made a small note in the margin. "Beware the cat and the candle." The next morning he departed at first light, mounted on a borrowed gelding, his satchel secured tightly and his wounded hand wrapped in linen. The villagers watched him go, some stifling smiles, others offering silent blessings that his path remain calmer from that day forward. And so the tale spread, not as a cautionary legend of beasts and flames, but as a gentle reminder that even the learned can misstep, that chaos and embarrassment are as much a part of life as study and wisdom, and that kindness offered in the moment of folly is a grace greater than any lesson learned. You wake beneath layers of wool and linen as though emerging from the earth itself, the weight of blankets like moss pressing gently against your skin. The room is hushed, lit only by the pale glow of dawn seeping through the shutter's narrow crack. You hear the soft breathing of those who share this space, rhythmic, unhurried, as natural as the rising light. Your body unfolds slowly, vertebra by vertebra, until your spine presses into the rough straw mattress. The air is cool against exposed skin, carrying the faint scent of drying herbs and the lingering warmth of last night's embers. You push yourself to a seated position, letting the blanket slip from your shoulders in a near-silent sigh. Your bare feet touch the earthen floor with a quiet firmness, toes pressing into its cool firmness as you stand. Each movement is deliberate, mindful. You do not hurry. There is no rush. The world outside will wait for you. You pause by the small basin of water placed near the bed, a shallow bowl of clay smooth to the touch. You lift it to your lips, tilting your head so the water cascades gently across your face. The cold liquid braces you, sharpening your senses like a whispered invocation. You feel the grains of clay against your fingers, the pulse of coolness. In your cheeks, the lingering taste of damp earth on your tongue. You dress in the quiet ritual of layering cloth. First, the linen shift, pulled down carefully, its fibers coarse but comforting. You smooth each wrinkle by hand, feeling the cloth settle against your shoulders and down your arms. Then the kirtle, its dyed wool almost too heavy at first, but warming quickly as it conforms to your form. You tie the laces with fingers that move by habit, knotting the cord at your waist with a deliberate tug. You place your cloak across your shoulders, lifting its weight as though gathering protection against the chill. You secure the hood with a small wooden pin, the metal glinting even in the muted morning light. You move toward the hearth, where embers lie like glowing coals beneath a layer of ash. You rake them gently, revealing the red warmth beneath, breath coaxing the spark back to life. Flames flicker, climbing into languid movement, offering light and heat in equal measure. You place a few small sticks upon the stones, listening to the soft hiss as they catch. The hearth breathes warmth into the room, and you feel its welcome embrace weaving through your limbs, coaxing them to life. You step outside the door into the morning mist. The world is hushed, as though it holds its breath, waiting for your next move. The dew is still heavy on grass and cobblestones, and your boots sink only slightly as you walk. You inhale the cool air, tasting its faint sweetness and the promise of day. You pause to watch the sky shift gently from gray to pale rose, a silent orchestration of light that needs no conductor. You return to the hearth to prepare a simple meal. You fill a pot with water from the jug, carry it to the hearth, and hang it from the iron hook. You add a handful of oats and stir with a wooden spoon, noting the soft clink as wood meets clay. The porridge begins to steam, sending ribbons of warmth spiraling upward. You crush a few dried berries between your fingers and sprinkle them in, watching as their color seeps into the pale grains. The aroma is subtle and rich, a quiet promise of nourishment. You scoop a ladleful into your bowl and carry it to the table by the window. You sit and draw the bowl close, hands wrapped around its warmth. You lift each spoonful with care, tasting the earth in each grain, feeling the slow comfort spread through your chest. You breathe in the cadence of the morning, the hush of waking, the soft crackle of fire, the distant call of a rooster or the low murmur of someone stirring in a neighboring dwelling. There is no hurry. There is only now, and the gentle unfolding of dawn. When the bowl is empty, you stand and wipe it clean with the damp cloth at your side, returning it to its place on the shelf. You offer a silent farewell to the hearth that has seen countless mornings like this one, and you step back into the rhythm of the day, feet steady, breath calm, spirit attuned to the soft chorus of a world awakening in its own unhurried time. You step beyond the threshold and let the door close behind you with a soft, deliberate thud. The village is stirring now, though still wrapped in the hush of dawn. You walk along the dew-slick path toward the well, boots leaving shallow impressions in the earth. The air carries the distant song of a plow pulled by oxen, the slow scrape of metal on stone, and the low grunt of labor. You pause to breathe it in, feeling the pulse of communal effort ripple through your veins like warm water. At the well, you grip the worn rope and let the bucket descend until you sense the faint splash of water. You draw the pail upward, muscles, tightening and then releasing as you haul it free. The water glistens in the pale light, and you hold your palm beneath the rim to steady it before filling your own jug. Every drop feels precious, the fruit of a long descent into Earth's hidden chambers. You lift the jug to your shoulder and carry it toward the communal trough where animals gather for their morning drink. A group of goats bleat softly, noses pressed to the wooden trough, and you steady your step so as not to startle them. The water ripples as they lap, and you refill your bucket from the well once more, mindful of balance, of rhythm, of the gentle negotiation between weight and motion. Turning away, you move toward the fields where the first rows of barley stand slender and green. A man, and perhaps you, rise before him into the same dawn. You grasp a sickle, its blade curving like a crescent moon, and slide between the rows. Each stroke is precise. You bend to gather a handful of stalks, cradle them in one arm, then sweep the sickle in a smooth arc against the next, the blade whispering through the grain. You pack the cut stalks into bundles neat enough to stand on their own, a silent testament to your care and attention. When the bundle grows heavy, you carry it on your shoulder to the stack near the barn, arms adjusting to its weight, spine straight, head held high even as your breath grows steady and measured. Each footstep is deliberate as you journey back and forth, from field to stack, until your arms know the tireless language of labor and your back hums with the quiet ache of purpose. Later, you return to the cottage to assist with the milking. You slip inside without announcement, for this routine is practice in quiet courtesy. You wash your hands at the basin, then draw the small stool to the goat's side. You cradle its udder in your palm, pressing gently until the first warm drops gather in the pail below. There is a rhythm to it. Squeeze, release, pause, repeat, each motion a note in a melody of survival. The goat stands still, trusting, and you work with a patience that roots you in the present, each heartbeat in harmony with the animals. With the pail full, you rise and carry it into the cottage where the hearth smoke has given way to the scent of fresh bread cooling on a wooden board. You pour the milk into a wide bowl, lifting it carefully so the creamy surface breaks in soft curves. A child watches from the corner, eyes bright with anticipation, and you shake a few spoonfuls into their awaiting cup. Their lips purse at the first taste, eyes widening at the warmth and richness, and you smile at their small delight, knowing that this simple exchange carries the weight of both nurture and love. You gather your tools next. A loom shuttle for the cloth you weave, the spindle for the wool you roll, the knife for trimming shavings from the wooden plow handle you repair. Each tool is an extension of your skill, each task an affirmation that your hands, though rough, are capable of both creation and restoration. You settle into your chosen work with the steady rhythm of morning, shuttle through warp and weft, spindle spinning thread as though coaxing words from silence, blade carving wood until its shape glides like a promise. And all around you, the village sings its own chorus of work, the smith's hammer striking anvil, the baker's door opening on smoke and warmth, the shepherd's bell sounding across the hill. You are part of this living tapestry, each action a thread that weaves your existence into the fabric of communal life. There is no hurry, there is no clamor, only the soft hum of purpose, the gentle susurration of duty, and the quiet knowledge that in this world, every task, no matter how humble, carries the weight of hope and the promise of tomorrow. The sun climbs toward its zenith, painting the sky in pale hues that promise warmth, and the village moves into the gentle rhythm of midday. You step back through the cottage door carrying the bowls and platters you loaded before dawn, porridge remnants for the pigs, crusts of bread for the hens, and find the hearth roaring now, its embers glowing bright enough to bake or boil anything you set upon its stones. A pot of broth simmers low on one corner, filled with the bones saved from last night's meal, flecked with bay leaves and shards of onion skin that lend color and comfort. You add fresh water from the well, stirring the surface until the bubbles rise in slow, deliberate clusters, and then lift the pot's handle to turn it so it hangs squarely above the flame. At the table, a loaf of barley bread waits, its crust hard enough to crack under your fingertips, its crumb pale and steady. You slice it with a knife whose blade has been sharpened this very morning, each cut producing a thin cloud of crumbs that dust the board like fine sand. You arrange the slices in a shallow basket, tucking a clean linen cloth around their edges, to keep them warm, and set it where hands can reach it easily. Beside it sits a small bowl of cheese, crumbly, tangy, scented faintly of hay and mildew, plus a plate of cold vegetables, turnips sliced thin, carrots cut with a steady hand, their colors muted by the season's waning light, a handful of fresh herbs, parsley, sage, perhaps a sprig of thyme, rests atop them, a promise of life even as the days shorten. You ladle the broth into bowls, the liquid warm as blood, carrying the fragrance of marrow and herbs. Steam curls upward, pressing against your cheeks like a soft caress. You carry each bowl with care, mindful of how the heat seeps into the clay, warming the fingers that grip it. You offer one to the elder who sits by the hearth, her back bent in the way that suggests she has carried the weight of many seasons, and another to the child who watches with wide eyes, eager for sustenance. A man nods his thanks, his hand steady, even as hunger tugs at his ribs. Each person bows their head as they receive their meal, a silent gesture of gratitude that feels as nourishing as the food itself. Your own bowl rests in front of you now, and you lift the spoon in your hand. The first taste brings the richness of bone and the warmth of salt, grounding you in the present moment. You chew mindfully, noting the way the grains of broth catch on your tongue, the occasional crunch of a softened vegetable, the quiet tang of cheese that lingers at the edges of each bite. The flavors are simple, unadorned by spices beyond what the land can offer, yet they feel like revelation. Sustenance woven from earth and water, from the labor of hands that tilled and harvested, and prepared from the soft blessing of dawn's fire. Conversation is soft, measured, an undercurrent rather than a flood. You hear the elders speak of a neighbor's child, recently returned from the fields with a wounded leg and now on the mend. You catch the hushed laughter at a joke about how the cat has taken to sleeping in the straw pile outside the barn, insisting on straw as her personal cushion. You note the way voices dip and rise, rhythms shaped by habit and courtesy rather than urgency or spectacle. You know these voices, these stories, as intimately as your own heartbeat. When the broth is gone, you dip a piece of bread into the remaining liquid, letting it soak until it softens and sags, then lift it to your lips and chew slowly. Each bite feels like an extension of the hearth's warmth, like the slow unfurling of comfort from within. You brush crumbs from the table with your fingertips, gathering them into your palm to feed to the waiting piglets just outside the door, their squeals of delight echoing through the threshold and reminding you that nothing is wasted here. Every morsel nourishes life. You refill bowls and platters as needed, wiping spills with the damp cloth at your waist, moving with deliberate care so that the meal flows without interruption. When all have eaten their fill, you collect the empty dishes and carry them back to the hearth to be washed, hot water poured over them, then scrubbed with a rough cloth until the traces of broth and crumbs vanish. You turn the dirty water to the hearth's edge, sifting ash through wooden buckets to filter it before pouring it onto the midden. Each act is a closing gesture, an unspoken expression of respect for the labor that came before and the promise of labor yet to come. As you stow the last utensils and settle coals beneath the pot for later use, you feel the gentle weight of midday. Neither full rest nor resumed labor, but a pause that honors both. You pause yourself, hands resting on the cool stone of the hearth, and inhale the mingled scents of wood smoke, damp linen, and cooked grain. The day stretches before you, undemanding and steady, its midpoint marked not by clocks or bells, but by the shared ritual of sustenance. You step back into its rhythm refreshed, carrying the warmth of community and the quiet strength of simple nourishment out into the afternoon light. The sun hangs high, its warmth pressing gently through the open shutters as you step back outside, carrying the quiet fulfillment of the midday meal within your bones. The fields beckon again, rows of ripening grain swaying in a soft wave. The stalks almost brittle beneath your fingertips. Yet this hour is not for relentless toil, but for the ease that follows honest labor. You gather your tools, an unfinished basket of woven reeds, the shuttle for a half-loomed cloth, a small knife for carving wooden toys, and move toward the communal shade beneath the old oak at the edge of the green. Here, the earth is cool beneath the trees' sprawling roots, and the dappled light filters through leaves that murmur with summer's lullaby. You choose the basket first. Its reeds, harvested just days before, are still pliant and pale. You bend one slender strip and press it into the woven base, weaving it under and over the spokes with fingers that have performed this dance since childhood. Each pass of reed against reed is a demonstration of care, a silent exchange of intentions between your hands and the living plant that offered its fibers. As you work, your mind unravels the chores that lie ahead, the mending of a child's wooden cartwheel, the painting of a doorframe with lime wash, the gathering of wildflowers at twilight for drying. But here, for now, you let the basket's shape guide your focus, each loop and twist a meditation that slows your breathing and steadies your thoughts. Beside you, others gather in small clusters. A woman spins wool into yarn, her spindle dipping and rising in a gentle arc as though breathing in time with the breeze. Children play beneath the boughs, reciting whispered rhymes in a game of hide-and-seek among the roots, their laughter muted and respectful of the afternoon's hush. A group of elders sits nearby on stools of carved oak, talking softly about the year's prospects, whether the rain will come in time for the final sowing, whether the Lord's taxes will be lighter or heavier this harvest. You exchange a nod with one, and she offers you a cup of cool water from a leather flask infused with mint leaves that tingle on your tongue and ease the warmth in your chest. When the basket is finished, its shape sturdy, its sides smooth, you stand and brush. Stray strands from your skirt, admiring how the reeds catch the light like woven sunlight. You carry it to the edge of the meadow, setting it gently among the tall grasses to dry in the sun's soft glare. Then you retrieve the shuttle, returning to the half-loomed cloth waiting on the frame at the oak's foot. You thread the shuttle, with spun wool, dyed in muted russet, and guide it through the warp threads with a steady hand. The emerging cloth is simple, strips of color that will one day become a cloak or a pair of leggings. Yet in each shuttle's passage, you embed the memory of this peaceful hour, of the way the leaves sighed overhead and the bees hummed like distant bells. Time shifts imperceptibly as shadows lengthen. You close your eyes for a moment, tilting your face to the sun's warmth, and feel the weight of community settle around you, a shared understanding that work and rest are bound, that leisure here is not indulgence but necessity, a replenishment of spirit so you may meet the world's demands with grace. You rise, folding the cloth with care and rolling it into a bundle weighed equally by sweat and satisfaction. You tuck the bundle beneath one arm, basket beneath the other, and head back toward the village square where a small gathering has formed around a traveling musician. His instrument is a simple hurdy-gurdy, its wheel cranked by a slender hand, and as he plays, the notes spiral outward like birds taking flight. Villagers gather in a loose ring, tapping their feet in silent rhythm, their faces soft with appreciation. You step into the circle and allow your shoulders to sway, matching your breath to the music's gentle undulations. For a few precious breaths, there is no distinction between body and melody, only the shared pulse of sound and flesh, the reminder that joy, like work, is a communal act. When the melody fades, you offer the musician a handful of freshly split kindling, a gift in exchange for the music that lightens the heart. He accepts with a bow, cranking his wheel again to send a single note soaring into the afternoon. You continue on, feeling the hurdy-gurdy's echo in your chest, a song that will carry you through the tasks that await as evening approaches. And so the afternoon unfolds, a tapestry of leisure and labor, melody and weaving, conversation and quiet. Each moment offers its own small treasure, the relief of cooled water on a flushed cheek, the gentle tug of woven thread beneath your fingers, the shared smile between kindred souls beneath a common sky. Here, in this gentle interlude, you remember that life's richness lies not only in what you produce but in what you pause to appreciate, in the spaces between actions where stillness becomes a gift. The sun descends toward the horizon in slow surrender, and the sky deepens from pale rose to hushed lavender. You step outside with the evening's offerings, a bundle of firewood stacked neatly by the door, a pouch of dried herbs for the hearth's embers, and a lantern whose wick you trimmed at midday. The air has cooled, carrying the faint scent of grass and the distant promise of dew. You pause to watch the sun's last ribbon of light slip behind the hills, its warmth lingering on your cheeks like a gentle farewell. In the yard, children chase one another in soft laughter, their shadows long as they dart between barrels and carts. You pause to scoop a handful of blossoms from the late summer rosebush and tuck them into your cloak pocket, knowing their scent will mingle with the smoke inside and calm restless minds. The goats and sheep settle along the fence, nibbling the last tendrils of green while their bells tinkle in fading light. A dog pads alongside you, tail low, ears perked, as though sensing the shift in the world's rhythm. That time has paused between labor's last toll and the hush of night. You step through the door into your home, closing it with a soft, reverent click. The hearth fire remains, a bed of glowing coals beneath a few reluctant logs. You kneel before it and rake the embers, coaxing them to life with a breath that hums like a secret. Flickers of flame awaken and climb the logs, casting dancing shadows that ripple across the walls. You sprinkle rosemary and thyme onto the coals, watching as wisps of fragrant smoke spiral upward, carrying the scent of gardens and earth into every corner of the room. A small pot of broth, prepared earlier, simmers at the hearth's edge. You lift its lid, inhaling the steam's warmth as an offering to the senses. You add a few strips of dried meat and a handful of barley, stirring in slow circles that mirror the turning of the world. As the broth thickens, you set out shallow bowls and wooden spoons, knowing that this simple meal is both an ending and a promise, a way to gather nourishment before the rest that night will bring. Outside, the village bell tolls once, soft and deep, announcing the hour of vespers. You cross yourself, pressing your palm to your heart, and offer a silent prayer of gratitude for the day's gifts. The harvest gathered, the tasks completed, the shared laughter beneath the oak. The neighbors' lights flicker on, rows of lanterns shining in windows like watchful eyes. The world beyond these walls is settling into its own quiet, each home breathing softly in unison. You carry your bowl to the table by the hearth and sit, drawing the warm spoon to your lips. The broth is gentle and rich, its flavors familiar as a lullaby. You close your eyes with the first taste, letting the warmth pool in your chest. You chew slowly, minding each texture, the tenderness of meat reclaimed from smoke and salt, the firmness of barley that yields its sustenance without complaint, the whisper of herb that lingers like a blessing on your tongue. When the meal is ended, you wipe the bowl clean and set it to soak in hot water. You refill your lantern, trimming the wick so the flame will burn steady and low. You spread a few more sticks on the hearth, widening the circle of warmth until it touches the edges of the room. You fold your cloak and lay it beside the door, so that it will be ready when dawn calls again. You step to the window and open the shutter, letting the cool night air drift in. The first stars have emerged, pale pinpricks in a velvet sky. Cricket begins its chorus in the thatch above, and you listen as their song weaves with the sigh of the wind through the oak. You lean your forehead against the frame, breathing in the night's hush. Turning away, you find the string of beads you pressed into your pocket, rose petals now dry, their fragrance subdued but persistent. You unravel them slowly, letting each bead turn between your fingers, feeling the satin smoothness worn into them by countless days of handling. You whisper each name, each thought you wish to release into the spaces between the beads, then knot them together and hang them near the hearth to catch dreams. Finally, you approach the bed. The blankets, heavy and warm, lie waiting. You draw back the covers and slip beneath them, surrendering to the weight that anchors you. You lie on your side, facing the room's shadowed corner where the herbs hang in silent garlands. You feel the last vibrations of the day settle through your limbs like ripples dying on a windless pond. Your breath deepens, matching the slow flicker of the hearth's glow. As your eyes grow heavy, you offer one final thought: to carry the lessons of labor's rhythm into your dreams, to remember the taste of broth by firelight, to hold the hush of night within your heart. The embers embolden your rest, the herbs guard your slumber, and the world beyond holds its breath in anticipation of your new dawn. You breathe once more, and then drift beyond the threshold of wakefulness. The hearth murmurs its final lullaby. The shadows curl around you like gentle wings. The night enfolds you completely, and you find yourself carried, unresisting, into sleep. You awake in the quiet hush of your modern room, perhaps to the soft glow of a phone screen or the gentle hum of an electric kettle, and you feel an immediate contrast with the world you have just walked through. Then the morning light seeped through wooden shutters filtered by straw and thatch, carrying with it the scent of smoke and damp earth. Now, light pours through glass panes, precise and unwavering, offering warmth but never touch. Then, your hands were shaped by the texture of wool and the resistance of soil. Now, they rest upon smooth surfaces, plastic, metal, glass, each movement engineered for efficiency rather than necessity. Then you measured time by the tolling bells, by the sun's arc across the sky, by the thickness of your shadow upon the ground. Now you measure it by digital ticks and notifications that never sleep, slicing moments into fragments that only sometimes feel real. In that world, every action wove you into a living tapestry of labor and rest, of hearth and field, of community bound by shared breath and stories told beside firelight. You rose with the dawn, bent to the earth, breathed in the world's rhythms as though they were a second skin. Your work was neither hidden nor hurried. It was visible in the rising stacks of grain, in the bundled reeds of baskets, in the smoke that curled above every clay pot. Now, your labor often takes place in invisible currents, data transferred, messages sent, codes compiled, removing you one layer farther from the soil that once anchored your senses. You wake to tasks that require little physical exertion yet demand constant attention, and you rest to a chorus of alerts that tug at your awareness long after your body has grown still. Then, community meant faces worn by seasons, voices marked by the cadence of the same prayers and the same songs. You knew each neighbor's strengths and sorrows by the tilt of a head or the tremble in a hand. You shared tools, meals, burdens, and celebrations without calculation or contract. Now, community often exists in pixels and profiles, bound by agreements you scarcely read, experiencing intimacy through curated images and fleeting reactions. You might have thousands of connections, yet miss the warmth of a hand pressed to your shoulder, the unspoken comfort of shared silence. Yet beneath these contrasts lies a common thread, the human desire to belong, to find meaning, to weave stories that outlast individual lives. You carry that desire with you, whether you tend fields or fields of data, whether you light fires or switch on lamps, whether you speak beside hearths or behind screens. You may have lost the rhythm of manual labor, but you inherited the legacy of memory and of reflection. And in this gentle comparison between then and now, you discover that progress need not sever you from the earth or from each other. It need only remind you softly that warmth belongs to more than fire, and community to more than place. In the centuries since those smoke-warmed hearths and earthen floors, humanity has forged marvels that our 1400s counterpart could scarcely imagine. Cities of stone and glass that stretch beyond every horizon, lights that banish darkness at our command, medicines born of chemistry and science that hold disease at bay and mend bones with precision unthinkable in earlier age. We travel across continents in hours rather than weeks, speak to one another through invisible currents, and summon the sum of human knowledge with a tap upon a glowing surface. These are gifts of progress, gifts that cradle us in comfort, propel us with speed, and grant us freedom from many of the daily drudgeries that once shaped every breath, and yet, in exchange for these triumphs, we have traded rhythms forged by nature for ones dictated by screens and schedules. We have untethered our bodies from the land, sending our hands from soil to keyboard, from plow to remote control. We have surrounded ourselves with convenience, climate-controlled air, food prepared in minutes, instant entertainment. Yet convenience often leaves us hungrier for authenticity, for the tangible proof of our labor, for the quiet assurance that we belong to the earth as much as it belongs to us. We have gained speed but lost slowness, efficiency but sometimes sacrificed presence. We can talk to a friend on another continent, yet pass a neighbor without meeting the door's threshold. We can summon any answer, yet strain to remember how to wait, how to wonder, how to simply be. We have banished many fears of old, death from smallpox, the agony of untreated fractures, the isolation of remote hamlets. Yet new anxieties arise. The hum of notifications in the dark, the endless scroll of curated lives, the sprawling anonymity of global crowds. We glimpse each other in pixels, but seldom in person. We know our global carbon numbers, yet sometimes neglect the soil beneath our feet. We map the stars with telescopes and lose sight of the wonder in the sky above our rooftops. We hold in our hands devices whose power dazzles, yet we wonder quietly if we have made enough room for silence, for community, for the steady drum of shared ritual that once bound us so closely. Still, these gains and losses are not absolutes, but parables, guides to help us choose what to carry forward and what to set down. We can honor the care of the midwife even as we marvel at surgical precision. We can cultivate gardens on balconies even as we send algorithms across networks. We can slow our pace by lighting a single candle in the evening, by gathering friends around a table without distraction, by rising before dawn now and then to listen to birdsong instead of headlines. In these small acts we bridge the centuries, weaving the steady grace of old-world rituals into the tapestry of modern life. In this space of reflection, neither past nor present holds dominion. Instead, you find yourself standing between two worlds, one of straw and smoke, one of steel and data, and you draw from both the seeds of wisdom. You carry forward the gains of health and connection, while reclaiming the lost rhythms of slowness and tangible labor. You learn that progress need not erase ritual, that comfort need not extinguish wonder, that the hum of engines can coexist with the hush of dawn. And in that realization you find a path not to return, but to become fully present here and now, rooted in the earth, attuned to the world, and guided by the steady flame of meaning that has always burned, in every age, within the human heart. You have walked through shadowed halls of history and felt the hush of hearth fires that burned long before your own. You have breathed the cold dawn air of a world that measured time by tolling bells and by the slow unfolding of seasons. Now you return to the warmth of your own moment, where memory foam or down pillows cradle your body and where light awaits. You beckon at the press of a switch. Yet even here, in comfort and convenience, you carry the echo of those ancient rhythms, of labor and rest, of smoke and breath, of shared meals and whispered prayers. Allow that echo to settle gently in your chest. Let it remind you that beneath the hum of engines and the glow of screens there lies a quieter pulse, the pulse of your own breathing, the pulse of community bound by kindness, the pulse of hands that build and heal and sow. In the silence between notifications, you may hear the soft whisper of labor, knitting, kneading, framing thoughts in words as carefully as one once wove cloth on a wooden loom. In the gentle ache of tired limbs, you may feel the solidarity of countless hands that bent beneath burdens of soil and grain, finding dignity in each small triumph. You are invited now to carry a thread of that world into your own. Perhaps you will plant a single seed in a window box and attend to its slow unfurling. Perhaps you will light a candle at dusk and listen for the hush of night arriving, free from distraction. Perhaps you will share a simple meal with a friend without looking, beyond their face, feeling the warmth of presence as nourishment itself. Each act is an invitation to weave the tapestry of old and new, to lay a patch of ritual over the fabric of modernity, to honor the past not as relic, but as living guide. Rest now in the knowledge that you are part of a timeless continuum, of those who rose at dawn to coax life from earth, and of those who now rise to coax dreams behind glowing screens. You need not choose one world over the other, but may live between both, drawing strength from the slow and the swift, from the tactile and the virtual, from the whispered past and the humming present. As you close your eyes, imagine the flicker of candlelight mingling with the glow of your bedside lamp. Feel the soft weight of blankets like woolen cloaks holding you against the chill of night. Allow the hush of centuries to cradle you, and let sleep find you gently, like a story that drifts through open shutters at dawn. Rest now, traveler, and carry these whispers of history into your dreams.